Tonight, we're exploring the complete history of every regional form, from the sun-drenched islands of Alola to the ancient wilds of Hisui and beyond. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on the shores of a tropical beach, salt air thick and warm against your skin. You see a familiar silhouette in the distance, a tall, slender neck rising high above the palm trees. You recognize the shape of an Executor, a Pokemon you've known since the earliest days of your journey through Kanto. But as you get closer, you realize something is different. Its neck stretches 40 feet into the air, its tail ends in a sentient fourth head, and it radiates a power that feels entirely disconnected from the grass and psychic types you remember. This is not the Pokemon you know. This is something shaped by the very land it walks upon. The concept of regional forms changed everything. We thought we understood about the Pokemon world. For decades, we viewed Pokemon as static entities, fixed in their biological roles and elemental types. A Vulpix was always fire, a Sandshrew was always ground. But the discovery of the Alolan variants shattered that illusion, revealing a world that is far more fluid, reactive, and alive than we ever dared to imagine. It introduced the idea of biological adaptation, showing us that Pokemon are not just magical creatures, but living organisms that must evolve or perish when faced with new environments. Why does a Meowth in the Galar region grow thick, iron-like fur, and develop a temperament suited for Viking-like raids, while its cousin in Alola becomes a pampered, cunning dark type? Why did the ancient Growlithe of Hisui possess stone-like armor that vanished by the time the modern era began? These aren't just cosmetic changes. These are stories written in DNA, tales of survival, migration, and the relentless passage of time. To understand regional forms is to understand the history of the Pokemon world itself, tracing the invisible lines of climate change, industrialization, and ancient mythology. The stakes of this exploration go beyond mere statistics or type matchups. We are looking at the soul of the franchise, a shift in design philosophy that allowed the creators to revisit the past while forging a completely new future. It is a bridge between the nostalgia of the original 151 and the bold experimental frontiers of the modern games. When we reached the milestone of the 1000th Pokemon in Paldea, it was the regional forms that often felt the most grounded, reminding us that even in a world of legendary gods and ultra-dimensional beasts, the most compelling stories are often found in the way a simple creature adapts to the dirt beneath its feet. Tonight, we are going to peel back the layers of these transformations. We will look at the volcanic pressures that forced Marowak to dance with ghosts, the industrial smog that turned Weezing into a living air purifier, and the tragic, frozen history of the Hisuian Zoroark. We will examine the strange phenomenon of regional evolutions, where a Pokemon's environment doesn't just change its look, but unlocks an entirely new stage of life that was previously thought impossible. There is a deep mystery at the heart of this. Some of these forms represent the peak of health and prosperity, while others, like the bleached corals of Galarian Corsola, serve as a haunting warning about the fragility of the natural world. Why did certain species thrive in new lands, while others were twisted into something unrecognizable? How do these variants interact with the legends and myths of their respective regions? And what does the existence of these forms tell us about the future of Pokemon biology? As we settle in for this long journey through the history of Alola, Galar, Hisui, and Paldea, let the details wash over you. We will traverse snow-capped mountains, bustling industrial cities, and ancient forgotten forests. We will meet the 54 species that have defied their original blueprints to become something new. This is a story of resilience, a story of change, and a story of a world that never stops reinventing itself. From the very first Alolan Rattata scurrying through the night to the 3 distinct breeds of Paldean Tauros, we are going to cover it all. Close your eyes and let the map of the Pokemon world expand in your mind. We are leaving the familiar behind and stepping into a reality where the Pokemon you thought you knew are waiting to surprise you once again. The journey begins now. For 20 years, the Pokémon world operated under an unspoken rule. A species was a species. Pikachu was Pikachu, whether you encountered it in Kanto's Viridian Forest or Johto's Route 36. Its typing, its appearance, its very essence remained static across every region, every generation. Evolution was predictable, almost mechanical. But the natural world, even a fictional one, doesn't work that way. Life adapts, environments change, and the creatures within them must change too, or they vanish. The Alola region, first revealed to the world in 2016, did something the franchise had never dared before. It introduced us to a concept so fundamentally biological, so rooted in real-world ecology, that it forever altered how we perceive the Pokémon universe. Regional forms. These weren't just new species or mere palette swaps. They were living proof that the Pokémon world was a breathing, evolving ecosystem, one shaped by geography, climate, and time itself. When the first trailers for Pokémon Sun and Moon dropped, the shock was palpable. Fans watched as a familiar Rattata, that ubiquitous purple rodent of early roots, appeared with a darker coat and a new type, dark and normal. Then came a Vulpix that looked like it had stepped out of a snowstorm, pure ice instead of fire. The most surreal moment, perhaps, was Executor. The classic coconut palm tree Pokémon suddenly sported a neck so absurdly long it towered over the entire screen. A literal adaptation to the tropical sunlight of Alola. Laughter and disbelief mixed in equal measure. How could this be? Was this a mistake? A joke? No. The Game Freak developers had, for the first time, applied a principle that should have been obvious from the start. Life finds a way. In a chain of islands teeming with volcanic activity, dense jungles, and intense sunlight, the Pokémon that settled there didn't stay the same. They changed. They evolved differently. The Alolan variants weren't just cosmetic. They represented a complete rethinking of survival strategies. That Rattata, for instance, became nocturnal to avoid predation by the region's aggressive Yungoos, a direct adaptation to ecological pressure. The concept was simple, yet it shattered the status quo of 2 decades of static species design. For the first time, the Pokémon world felt truly alive. Every island, every route, every cave could hold a variant that had diverged from its mainland ancestors. The promise was huge, a living ecosystem where isolation and environment drove evolution, and the fans embraced it. The initial confusion gave way to wonder. What other secrets might these islands hold? What other forms had nature crafted in the crucible of Alola's unique conditions? That curiosity, that hunger to discover a world in motion, is what makes the Darwinian shift so profound. It wasn't just a gimmick for one generation. It was a declaration that the Pokémon universe would no longer be static. As we turn our attention to the islands themselves, we begin to see the fingerprints of adaptation everywhere. The volcanic soil, the constant trade winds, the presence of invasive species. All of it left its mark on the creatures that called Alola home. The details of that transformation, the specific pressures and surprising results, are exactly what await us in Alola's tropical crucible. The previous chapter introduced the idea that Pokémon are not static creatures, that their biology bends under the weight of their surroundings, and that the Alola region was the first to prove this in a way that rewrote the rules of the entire world. But to understand how Alola became this crucible, this pressure cooker of adaptation, we have to first understand the islands themselves. The Alola region is a chain of tropical archipelagos, each with its own distinct climate, its own volcanic activity, and its own cultural history inspired by the real Hawaiian Islands. And when we talk about environmental pressure, we are not just talking about heat and humidity. We are talking about an entire ecosystem that forces species to either innovate or vanish. Take the humble Vulpix. In every other region, it is a fire type, a fox that dances with flames and thrives in grassy, temperate, even arid landscapes. But in Alola, something entirely different happened. The standard Vulpix did not simply change its fur color or learn a new move. It underwent a fundamental shift in its elemental identity. The lore behind Alolan Vulpix is one of the most telling examples of how geography can rewrite a Pokémon's core nature. According to the games, the original fire-type Vulpix once roamed the lower elevations of Alola, the warm, brush-covered slopes and coastal plains. But as the islands grew more crowded with predators and competitors, and as volcanic eruptions reshaped the terrain, These Vulpix were pushed upward, higher and higher, until they reached the frozen peak of Mount Lanakila. That migration was not just a matter of altitude. It was a journey from one world into another. The higher they climbed, the colder it became, and the less their fire could sustain them. Over generations, the flames that once flickered from their tails began to dim, replaced by a different kind of energy, an ice-type energy. It was not a sudden mutation, but a slow, grinding adaptation. The Vulpix that could tolerate the cold, that could draw heat from the environment in other ways, survived. Those that clung to their old fire perished. And so, what we call Alolan Vulpix today is not just a variant, it is a living record of that migration. Its snowy white fur, its icy blue tails, its ability to freeze the air around it. These are not cosmetic changes. They are the biological scars of a species that walked up a mountain and never came back. But why is this shift from fire to ice considered such a fundamental change in Pokémon biology? Because it breaks one of the oldest rules. In traditional evolution, a Pokémon's type is considered nearly as fixed as its species name. A fire type is born to be fire. Its body is built to generate and withstand combustion. But to become an ice type, the entire internal chemistry must be rewritten. The metabolism must slow, the internal furnace must be extinguished, and the body must learn to absorb ambient cold rather than produce heat. This is not a simple color swap. It is a complete overhaul of the creature's physiology. For Alolan Vulpix, this meant that the cute, fox-like face we knew now breathed out freezing mist instead of embers. Its evolution, Ninetales, gained an ability called Snow Warning, summoning a hailstorm simply by appearing. That is not a minor tweak. That is a declaration that this Pokémon is no longer the same being. And the environmental pressures of the Hawaiian-inspired archipelago did not stop with Vulpix. Every corner of Alola challenged the traditional forms. Consider the volcanic slopes, where standard Executor would have struggled to survive. The Alolan variant grew into a towering, palm tree-like creature, its neck extending to reach sunlight above the dense jungle canopy. Its secondary type changed from psychic to dragon, a shift that only makes sense when you realize that in the tropical ecosystem, being tall and resistant is more valuable than being psychic. Or take Alolan Marowak. The original Cubone and Marowak are ground type, mourning their mothers in the desert. But in Alola, they became fire and ghost. Why? Because the volcanic heat and the cultural reverence for ancestral spirits combined to create a creature that literally wields the flames of its departed kin. The lore says that the Marowak of Alola are often the lost souls of cubs who perished in fires, reborn with a burning vengeance. That is not just adaptation, that is myth-making. Every Alolan form tells a story of survival under a specific set of conditions. The islands are volcanic, tropical, and isolated. They are also teeming with other Pokémon that have carved out their own niches. Alolan Rattata, for example, became dark and normal instead of pure normal because it evolved to be more aggressive, more nocturnal, to compete with the introduced Yungoos. The lush environment did not make life easier, it made it fiercer. And that fierce competition, those volcanic eruptions, those monsoons, all of these forces acted like a forge, hammering each species into a new shape. So when we look at Alola, we are looking at a laboratory where the rules of Pokémon biology were rewritten in real time. The fire-type Vulpix climbed a mountain and became ice. The ground-type Cubone walked through a ghostly flame and became fire and ghost. The Executor grew and grew until it touched the sky. These are not random changes. They are the direct result of a very specific environment, a tropical crucible that forced every creature to either adapt or be left behind. And that concept, the idea that a specific place can permanently alter a Pokémon's type, its appearance, its very soul, would go on to influence every regional form that followed. But not every region is a tropical island. The next challenge came from a very different kind of environment. One built not by nature but by industry, where the pressures were not volcanic heat, but the cold steel of urbanization. And that story begins with a cat that chose to sharpen its claws on metal instead of earth. From the snowy heights of Mount Lanakila, where the Alolan Vulpix carved out a new life in the frozen peaks, we descend into the bustling, sun-soaked streets of the Alola region cities and towns. But not every adaptation in this tropical paradise was a quiet migration to cooler climates. Some transformations were born from conflict, competition, and the relentless pressure of urbanization itself. This is the story of a Pokémon that adapt not to the wilderness, but to the concrete jungle, a tale of night and shadow, fear and survival. It begins with a rat, but not just any rat. The original Rattata, found across Kanto, Yoto, and countless other regions, was a creature of the fields and forests. Small, quick, and endlessly prolific, it was a pest to farmers, a nuisance to travelers, but ultimately a creature of the natural world. Yet when Rattata populations arrived in Alola, they found a land already overrun with another invasive species. A predator had been introduced deliberately to control pests, but that predator had become the pest itself. That predator was Yungoos. Yungoos, a Pokémon native to a distant region, was brought to Alola as a biological countermeasure. The idea was simple. Release this territorial, aggressive mongoose into the wild, and it would hunt down the rampant Rattata that threatened Alola's native ecosystems. But nature, as it so often does, had different plans. Yungoos thrived. It multiplied. And soon, the hunters outnumbered the hunted. The Rattata of Alola found themselves trapped between two deadly threats: the indigenous predators of the island and the relentless, introduced Yungoos that prowled day and night, driven by an unending hunger. Survival demanded a radical shift. The Rattata that survived were not the strongest or the fastest, but the ones who bent their very biology to the pressure of their new environment. They began to change. Their typical brown fur, perfect for blending into dirt and dry grass, gave way to a sleek, darker coat. Their eyes, once adapted to scattered daylight, expanded to capture every scrap of moonlight. They became creatures of the night, shunning the sun where Yungoos held dominion. And this was not simply a shift in behavior. It was an evolutionary pivot etched into their DNA. This nocturnal adaptation came with a cost. To move through the shadows, to evade predators that hunted by sight and smell, to claim the dark as their own domain, the Alolan Rattata developed a new type. They became Dark type. This was not a superficial change in color or texture. The Dark type represented a fundamental rewiring of their instincts and abilities. Their bite carried a chill of malice. Their movements became unpredictable, almost sinister. They learned to use the city itself as a weapon, darting through sewer grates, nesting in abandoned buildings, and raiding garbage bins under the cover of night. And so, the story of Alolan Rattata and Raticate is also the story of an invasive species turned combatant. In an ironic twist, the very invasive Yungoos that was meant to control them became the catalyst for their transformation. Now the Alolan Rattata and its evolution, the massive, bloated Alolan Raticate, are themselves a form of urban pest control. Not by design, but by ruthless adaptation. They compete directly with Yungoos and its evolution Gumshoos for territory and food, turning the streets of Alola into a nocturnal battlefield. The Rattata that once were prey have become rivals, their dark typing giving them a critical edge in the hours after sunset. Consider the biology of this change. The typical Raticate is known for its powerful, sharp fangs and aggressive temperament. Alolan Raticate retains that ferocity, but its dark typing grants it a cannier edge. It becomes a gourmand of the city's waste, its stomach adapting to process virtually anything, even the most spoiled, toxic refuse. This ability to thrive on garbage and scraps makes it a fixture in the underbelly of Alola's urban centres, from the glittering resorts of Hau'oli City to the back alleys of Po Town. But this dietary resilience also makes it a menace to agriculture and food storage, forcing locals to guard their harvests with even greater vigilance. The emergence of the Dark type in Alolan Rattata and Raticate is a textbook case of evolution under duress. It was not a gradual drift, but a rapid, forced response. The nocturnal pivot allowed them to exploit a niche that Yungoos and Gumshoos, diurnal predators, could not dominate. By becoming creatures of darkness, they seized control of the night, turning the city into their domain after twilight. This adaptation also brought a subtle psychological dimension. The Dark type in Pokémon lore is often associated with malice, cunning, and ruthlessness. Alolan Rattata learned to strike from the shadows, to intimidate prey with a glint in its eye, and to use fear as a weapon. The very essence of its being became aligned with the hidden, the secret, and the stealthy. Yet there is a melancholy to this story. The Alolan Rattata is a Pokémon that was shaped by human intervention, by our well-intentioned but ultimately disruptive introduction of an invasive predator. The urbanization of Alola, the construction of its sprawling cities, the influx of tourists and goods, all created a crucible where only the most adaptable could survive. And the Rattata, once a simple pest, became a symbol of that relentless, almost tragic flexibility. Its dark typing is not just a survival mechanism, it is a scar of conflict, a mark of a war fought in the shadows of our own progress. And as we move through the winding streets of Alola's cities, past the neon signs and the quiet parks, we must remember that the Rattata shuffling in the gutters carry the legacy of a biological invasion that reshaped an entire species. The night belongs to them now, and the Yungoos, once the conqueror, now watches daybreak with a wary eye. But this dark side of urbanization is only one facet of Alola's profound evolutionary disruption. The pressures of this region did not only reshape the small and the overlooked, they also reached into the past, into the very spirits of volcanic ash and ancient flames. And in the shadows of those fiery mountains, another transformation was brewing, one that would blur the line between the living and the dead. For on the slopes of Weller Volcano, under the red glow of molten rock, a Marowak was learning to dance with ghosts. That story of volcanic spirits and ghostly flames is the next chapter in this journey through the tangled roots of Alolan adaptation. Of course, here is the full spoken script for Chapter 4, Volcanic Spirits and Ghostly Flames. The nocturnal shift of Alola's Rattata lineage was a triumph of adaptation, a biological pivot born from the shadows of competition. But not every evolutionary story in this tropical crucible ended with a simple change in schedule. Some adaptations demanded a much deeper, much darker transformation. While the Raticate learned to skulk in the dark of the new moon, another creature of the night was undergoing a metamorphosis that would blur the line between life and death itself. The graveyards of Alola tell a different kind of story, one written not in bone and sinew, but in spectral flame and volcanic ash. To understand the tragedy of Alolan Marowak, we must first consider the island of Alola itself. It is a place of raw, untamed volcanic power, where the earth breathes heat and the air tastes of sulfur. Here, the native ecosystem has been shaped by fire in a way that is both literal and spiritual. The dominant predators of this landscape were not the night-dwelling Yungoos of Melameli. No, the apex threats to a ground-dwelling Cubone on Ulaula were the towering grass-type titans that thrived in the island's lush, volcanic soil. Executor in their strange, towering forms, and the swift, blade-wielding Kartana, if one counts the Ultra Beasts. But more commonly, the dense populations of wild Trevenant and the restless, lumbering Tangrowth presented a constant, overwhelming danger. For a Cubone, the grass type was not a source of sustenance, it was a sentence. Their bone clubs were little defense against a forest of living vines or a rain of psychic seeds. The typical Cubone of other regions, when faced with such an insurmountable predator-prey imbalance, would simply perish. Its line would thin. But something peculiar happened on the slopes of Mount Lanakila, and within the Weller Volcano Park, the spirits of those fallen Cubone, those who had cracked their last bone in a desperate struggle against a grass-type predator, did not simply fade. The island's unique volcanic energy, combined with the deep-seated grief of these maternal orphans, became a crucible for something new. Their mourning was so profound, their need to protect their surviving kin so absolute, that they refused to pass on. They clung to the world, their anger and sorrow fusing with the heat of the earth. The tragic lore behind Alolan Marowak's transition to a fire and ghost type is not a story of a simple elemental shift. It is a story of a species that had to die in a way to live. The living Cubone of Alola, witnessing the spectral flames of their ancestors, began a ritual. They started to dance with the fire. They learned to harness the very grief that had become a prison for the old ones. The traditional bone they wielded became a conduit for this stolen flame, and the skulls they wore, once simple relics of a lost mother, began to glow with a pale internal light. This was not a natural evolution in the Darwinian sense. This was a supernatural intervention. It was a defense born from the sheer, desperate need to exist. The abundance of grass-type predators in Alola necessitated a supernatural defense. A simple type change to rock or ground would have been useless. Only the immaterial, the ghostly, the incorporeal flame could offer protection from the grasping roots and the relentless growth. The fire of Alolan Marowak is not a fire of consumption. It is a fire of memory, of mourning. It is a ghostly flame. This transformation resonated deeply with the culture of the Alolan people, particularly on the island of Ula Ula. The practice of fire dancing, the Kiawe, is not merely a performance. It is a spiritual reenactment of this very legend. The flames of the Kiawe bonfire, often fueled by the wood of the Kiawe tree itself, are said to be a bridge, a way for the living to communicate with the spirits of the deceased Marowak. The trial of the same name, the Kiawe's trial, is the ultimate test of a trainer's understanding of this balance. It is a trial not of strength but of respect. The captain, the Kahuna, challenges you to face the ghostly flames, to acknowledge the grief that forged them, and to prove that you are worthy of the bond between the living and the departed. The cultural significance of the fire-dancing Kiawe and the Kiawe's trial cannot be overstated. It is a ritual that honors the sacrifice of a generation that refused to be forgotten. When you see an Alolan Marowak, its bone wreathed in blue-green fire, its skull helmet glowing with a sad eternal light, you are looking at a monument. You are looking at a species that chose to become a ghost in order to protect its children. It is one of the most powerful examples of how environment, loss, and an island's volcanic soul can rewrite the very laws of biology. From the ghostly fires of Ula Ula, we drift north, toward the sun-drenched shores of Executor Island. There, a different kind of transformation takes place, one that redefines not just a type, but the very idea of what a Pokémon silhouette can be. We will climb into the canopy of the impossible palm tree in our next chapter, the towering palm of Executor Island. Then there is the matter of the palm tree. You have walked past Executor in Kanto, in Yoto, perhaps even in Sinnoh, a cluster of 3 round heads balanced atop a stout trunk, a psychic type with grass typing, a creature that seemed more comical than majestic. But when you step onto Alola's shores, something changes. The sun here is relentless, almost oppressive, and under its hammering rays, the Executor you thought you knew becomes something else entirely, something towering. The mystery begins with a simple question. Why is the true form of Executor found only in Alola's intense sunlight? The games tell us that the Alolan variant is actually the original, the ancient form, the one that existed before the species migrated to other regions. And that migration, we learn, was a matter of survival. The sunlight in Alola is so powerful, so constant, that it triggered a chain reaction deep within the Execute line. The trees that remained in Alola grew taller and taller, reaching for the light, their necks elongating, until they became those absurd, glorious, 90-foot-tall monsters. The ones that left for regions with weaker sunlight, shrank, adapted, became the short, stubby creatures we met in the early games. So the towering palm is not a mutation, it is a return. But there is more. When the Alolan Executor was revealed, players noticed something shocking. Its new typing was not simply grass and psychic anymore. It had become a dragon. A dragon. How does a psychic tree made of coconut-headed eggs become a dragon? The answer lies in the prehistoric DNA hidden inside its genome. Think of it as a dormant switch, an ancient gene that was once active millions of years ago. When dragons roamed the world, in the intense ultraviolet radiation of Alola, that switch flipped back on. The scales on its trunk hardened, the shape of its neck became serpentine, and suddenly you were standing face to face with a living fossil. The dragon-type revelation was not a random addition. It was a decoding, a resurrection of something that had been buried by time and climate. Every time you see an Alolan Executor, you are looking at a creature that remembers the age of dinosaurs. And then, of course, the internet did what the internet does. The sheer absurdity of a 30-foot-tall dragon palm became the first viral meme of the regional variant era. Screenshots of it towering over buildings, jokes about it being a real-life chandelier, comparisons to absurdly long objects. It was everywhere. Fans lovingly mocked its impossible neck, its goofy grin, the way its heads dangled like party balloons. But beneath the laughter, something important happened. The meme gave regional variants a cultural foothold. It made people pay attention. Before Alolan Executor, the concept of a regional form was still new, still abstract. Afterward, it was impossible to ignore. The palm had become a symbol, a banner for the idea that Pokémon could be reimagined in wild, unexpected ways. As you drift toward sleep, let the image of that towering dragon palm linger, but know that the sunlight of Alola is not finished revealing its secrets. There is another form, one that lurks in the shadows of the island's chemical past, a rainbow-hued menace that will transform a beloved classic into something far more dangerous. That story is coming next. For now, rest under the shadow of the palm and let the prehistoric hum of its dragon pulse guide you deeper into the night. The towering palm of Executor Island revealed something profound about the hidden dragon-type lineage lurking within Alola's genetic memory, a prehistoric echo awakened by relentless sun and volcanic soil. That same landscape, however, holds a far messier secret, one born not from ancient DNA but from modern waste. In the bustling cities and tourist centres of Alola, a different kind of adaptation was taking place, one that would turn the very concept of industrial pollution on its head. You see, the Alolan region did not just reshape its native species through pristine environments like mountaintops and coral reefs. The harsh reality of human expansion created a new kind of crucible: landfills, sewage systems, and chemical runoff. And into this toxic soup waded an unlikely hero. Grimer and Muk, already infamous as living symbols of pollution in Kanto, found a new home in Alola's garbage dumps. But here, the story took a remarkable turn. Instead of simply surviving on waste, these Pokémon began actively consuming the region's most hazardous byproducts. This is the ecological cleanup mission of Alolan Grimer and Muk. They are not just scavengers, they are biological filters, drawn to the very substances that would poison other life forms. Industrial solvents, heavy metals, even the chemical runoff from Alola's agricultural industry, all of it became a feast. And as they gorged on this toxic banquet, something strange began to happen inside their bodies. The pollutants they ingested did not merely dissolve, they crystallized. The internal crystallization of toxins that created their vibrant shifting colors is a phenomenon unlike any seen in standard Pokémon biology. Picture microscopic mineral formations, each one a tiny prism, forming within the sludge of their cells. Over generations, these crystals grew and rearranged themselves, refracting light in ever-changing patterns. The result is a creature that is part living organism, part geode, its surface a kaleidoscope of blues, greens, and yellows that shift as it moves. This is not a static coloration like a standard Muk's uniform purple. It is alive, dynamic, a liquid rainbow that mirrors the chemical composition of whatever meal it last consumed. Why are these variants considered a rare example of human-driven beneficial evolution? Because for once, our presence did not force a species into a defensive corner. Instead, we inadvertently created a niche that turned a liability into an asset. Alolan Grimer and Muk do not just tolerate pollution, they require it. Their digestive systems have been rewired to break down the most stubborn toxins, leaving behind harmless residue and, in some cases, even purified water. In Alola, these Pokémon are not shunned. They are welcomed, even encouraged, in the very places other regions would seal off. The crystal-laden sludge they produce is even harvested by local researchers for study, its unique properties offering clues to bioremediation that could help clean disasters elsewhere. This is evolution as a partnership, a strange symbiosis between human industry and Pokémon adaptation, and it raises a tantalizing question. If our waste can forge such beauty, what other hidden advantages might lurk in the refuse of civilization? The answer might lie in a discovery that goes beyond biology, beyond chemistry, and into the very mechanics of energy itself. That story is the zero-energy phenomenon, a glitch in the fabric of Pokémon combat where attacks cost nothing to use, and it begins not in a laboratory, but in the shimmering, crystalline heart of an Alolan Muk. The previous chapter ended with a vision of Alolan Muk, its rainbow sludge shimmering in the Alolan sun, a living monument to adaptation through chemical absorption. But that transformation was not just a story of biology and ecology. It was also a story told through the lens of the Pokémon trading card game, where the Alolan era introduced a mechanic so stripped down, so elegantly simple, that it changed the way players approached the very concept of energy. We are talking about the zero-energy phenomenon. Let us step back from the volcanic slopes and tropical forests for a moment and look at the card table. When the Alolan forms first arrived in the Pokémon trading card game, they brought with them something almost unheard of: in the modern era of the game. Attacks that cost nothing, no energy attachments, no color requirements, just an ability and a cost of 0. To understand why this was so significant, we have to consider the resource economy that governs every match. Energy cards are the lifeblood of any strategy. Every attack, every retreat, every power-up demands a currency that must be drawn from your deck, attached to your Pokémon, and carefully managed. When a card can retaliate without spending that currency, it becomes a wild card, a threat that your opponent cannot predict based on your energy reserves alone. The lore of the Alolan region directly informed this design. The Pokémon of Alola, especially those that adapted to the islands, became resourceful survivors. They learned to thrive with what was available, often making do with very little. In the harsh, sun-baked environments of Alola, wasting energy was a luxury no creature could afford. So, when you look at an Alolan Vulpix in the TCG with an attack that costs 0 energy, you are not just seeing a gameplay gimmick. You are seeing a reflection of its real-world counterpart's ability to hunt and defend itself without needing to expend its internal reserves. It is a mechanical echo of the very survival strategy that defined the island life. The strategic impact of these free retaliation attacks was profound. They turned otherwise fragile Pokémon into instant response tools. You could have an active Pokémon knocked out, and then, without skipping a beat, send out a benched Alolan form that could strike back immediately, no energy needed. It was a form of counterplay that rewarded patience and positioning over brute force. Opponents had to think twice before attacking, because a 0 energy retaliation could swing the momentum in a single turn. This was especially powerful in the Sun and Moon era of the TCG, where many decks relied on heavy energy acceleration to set up their big attackers. A free attack could interrupt that delicate engine, forcing players to adapt or be overrun. And the Pokémon Company leaned into this theme with full commitment. The Alolan era of the TCG was a deep dive into what it meant to be resourceful. Cards like Alolan Grimer, with a 0 energy attack that poisoned the opponent, or Alolan Diglett that could chip away damage without any cost. These were not just filler cards, they were design statements. They whispered the same story the main games had been telling. That adaptability was the true strength of these island forms. Even the artwork on these cards often depicted the Pokémon in their natural habitats, poised and waiting, conserving every shred of power for the right moment. But the 0 energy phenomenon was not just a gameplay mechanic, it was also a storytelling device. It illustrated, in the clearest possible terms, the difference between mainland and island life. On the mainland, Pokémon rely on the flow of energy from gyms, trainers, and the vast resources of civilization. On the islands, they rely only on themselves. They do not have the luxury of a support network. They must be self-sufficient. And so in the card game, they attack without cost. They are the ultimate expression of independence. And the TCG lore mirrored that resourceful nature perfectly. As the Alolan sun sets on this chapter, we realize that the 0 energy phenomenon was not an isolated experiment. It was a seed planted for future generations. The next time a similar idea blossom, it will be in a very different setting. One defined not by tropical heat and volcanic ash, but by steam, iron, and the relentless march of industry. That will be the focus of our next chapter. Galar and the Industrial Revolution. But for now, let the quiet hum of the Alolan night carry you deeper into sleep, knowing that even the smallest, most energy-efficient creature can change the course of a battle. From the 0 energy phenomenon of Alola's trading card game, we now step onto a very different shore, where Alola offered warm sands and tropical breezes. Galar greets you with the clang of machinery and the smell of coal smoke. It is a region shaped by industry, by progress, and by the unrelenting march of the Industrial Revolution. And just as those Hawaiian islands forced Pokémon to adapt to volcanic rock and coral reefs, Galar's factories and cities demanded an entirely new kind of survival. We are transitioning from tropical islands to the soot-stained factories of the Galar region. The very air is thicker here, the rivers run with strange colours, and the Pokémon that once roamed these lands have either fled or they have changed. This is not merely a shift in geography, it is a shift in philosophy. Alola's regional forms were born from sunlight and salt spray. Galar's regional forms are born from steel and steam. The thematic shift toward British folklore and the consequences of the industrial age runs deep through every design in this generation. Galar is inspired by the United Kingdom, and its lore draws from Arthurian legend, from Celtic mythology, from the gritty reality of Victorian-era factories. Take Galarian Weezing, for example. Its top hat and smoke clouds are not just decoration. They are a direct reference to the chimney stacks of London, to the soot that once blackened the sky. Weezing's smoke now filters toxins, a living air purifier for a polluted world. And yet there is tragedy here too. Galarian Corsola, once vibrant and pink, has turned pale and ghostly white, its branches bleached by warming waters and acid rain. It is a silent memorial to what industrialization can destroy. But perhaps the most radical innovation in Galar is not just new forms, it is entirely new evolutions. How Galarian forms introduced the concept of regional evolutions, like Obstagoon, changed the way we think about adaptation. Before Galar, regional variants simply changed type and appearance, but they still evolved into the same final stage. Not anymore. Galarian Linone, a sleek and speedy Pokémon, evolves into Obstagoon when it reaches a certain level. Obstagoon is not a Galarian version of any existing Pokémon. It is a brand new evolutionary step. Its design is a masterwork of cultural influence. The black and white face markings of a badger, the leather jacket and spiked hair of a punk rocker, the defiant stance of a street fighter. This is a Pokémon that adapted not just to nature, but to culture. It learned to thrive in the underground music scene of Galar's cities, to scrap for territory in back alleys and train yards. And Obstagoon is not alone. Galarian Meowth, once a simple feline, now bears a rusted coin on its forehead and a scruffy beard. It evolves into Berserker, a Viking-inspired warrior with a helmet of iron and a temperament forged in battle. This is no cuddly pet. It is a creature of conquest, a nod to the Norse influence on the British Isles. Even the legendary birds of Kanto were not spared from Galar's transformation. Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres took on new forms that reflect the region's rugged highlands and stormy coasts. Articuno became a psychically charged cryokinetic being, Zapdos a thundering brute that runs across fields, and Moltres a sinister fire-eyed spectre that punishes those who disturb its territory. These are not the guardians of nature we once knew. They are the guardians of an ancient, industrialized land. Every Galarian form tells a story of compromise and survival. Galarian Slowpoke, for example, once ate shelter that contained a potent toxin. That poison now infuses its entire body, turning its evolution into a poison type. Galarian Slowbro wields a shell that fires poisonous barbs. Galarian Slowking commands the toxins with a mind sharpened by the very venom that should have killed it. It is a beautiful irony. What would be a weakness in any other region becomes a strength in Galar. The land itself is tough, and so the Pokémon must be tougher. And yet, even as we marvel at these adaptations, there is a lingering question. What happened to all the waste? The factories never stop. The trains never stop. The smoke never stops. Where does all that pollution go? Who cleans up the mess? The answer, as you might suspect, lies in the Pokémon that call these smog-choked cities home. Some of them, in fact, have become experts at devouring the very byproducts of industry. But that is a story for another moment. A story we will explore in the next chapter, when we turn our attention to the pollution eaters of Galar. They are the unsung heroes of this industrial nightmare, and their tale is one of resilience, transformation, and a hunger that knows no bounds. From the soot-stained factories of Galar, we now turn our attention to the very air those factories poisoned, and to the strange creature that evolved to eat that poison. Because the Industrial Revolution did not just reshape the landscape of this region, it reshaped the biology of its native Pokémon in ways that are both ingenious and deeply ironic. Consider the original Coughing and Weezing. These were simple, almost cartoonish embodiments of air pollution. Floating spheres of toxic gas with skull and crossbones motifs. Their bodies a chaotic cloud of smog. They were pests, hazards, the natural byproduct of any urban sprawl. But in Galar, where the coal fires burned day and night for centuries, where the steam engines never stopped, and where the air itself grew thick with particles of industry, something unexpected happened. The pollution became so dense, so persistent, that it forced an evolutionary response. And that response was Galarian Weezing. Now this form is not just a palette swap or a new set of abilities. Galarian Weezing is, in the truest sense, a living air purifier. Its body has transformed into a kind of organic filter. Where the original Weezing simply expelled and stored gas, this variant actively consumes the pollutants around it, breaking down toxic compounds into harmless, even beneficial, components, the smoke that spews from its chimneys. Yes, its chimneys is clean air. It breathes in the blackened sky and breathes out a faint, sweet fragrance. It is a paradox, a poison type that cleans the environment. And yet, what makes this paradox so striking is the creature's appearance. Galarian Weezing sports a long, elegant mustache and most famously, a top hat. But look closer. That top hat is not made of silk or felt. It is formed from two factory smokestacks that have fused together, chimney caps and all, rising from the top of its head like a Victorian gentleman's headwear. The mustache too is a pair of exhaust pipes. This is a creature that has literally donned the tools of its own industrial oppression, transforming them into symbols of status. The irony is rich. A poison type, the very type associated with toxicity and waste, dressed in the regalia of the very era that created the pollution it now consumes. But why fairy and poison? Why did Galarian Weezing gain the fairy type? This is where the lore of Galar itself becomes crucial. You see, the region of Galar is not just about industry. It is deeply rooted in British folklore, a land of fairy circles, enchanted forests, and mystical creatures. The Industrial Revolution did not erase those ancient stories. It corrupted them. The coal and steam that powered the factories also fed the local legends, turning pure spirits into soot-stained versions of themselves. The fairy type, traditionally associated with nature, purity and light, became tainted by the very atmosphere. Galarian Weezing represents that corruption. A fairy that has adapted to a poisoned world, a creature of myth forced to evolve in a landscape of iron and smoke. Its fairy typing is not a gift of purity, it is a stain of survival. It is as if the ancient spirits of the Galarian countryside, once clean and magical, were slowly infused with factory fumes, and Weezing became the vessel for that strange new hybrid. So this is what we have: a living air purifier that wears a chimney top hat, a poison type that is also a fairy, a creature born from the very pollution it now cleanses. It is a perfect tragic emblem of Galar, a region that tried to conquer nature and ended up creating something that both preserves and mocks its legacy. And yet, as effective as Galarian Weezing is at scrubbing the skies, there are other darker remnants of Galar's industrial past. Remnants that were not cleansed but cursed. Remnants that still lurk in the forgotten corners of the region, waiting for someone to disturb them. We will explore those cursed spirits and the ancient corals that hold their memories in the very next chapter. Galarian Weezing may have donned its top hat and set to work scrubbing the soot from Galar skies, but the damage had already been done. The Industrial Revolution did not stop at the air. It seeped into the water, crept into the soil, and reached the very shores where the Pokémon world's most delicate ecosystems once thrived. For generations, the temperate waters off the coast of Galar had been home to vast colonies of Corsola, brilliant pink coral Pokémon that formed underwater cities of living stone. But when the factories belched their waste into the rivers, and the runoff carried chemicals and heat into the sea, those reefs began to die, slow at first. A patch of white here, a brittle crack there, then faster, entire branches falling away like brittle bone. What remained was not alive in any sense the world had known. The coral polyps that housed the spirit of Corsola grew sick. Their pink shells turned pale, ghostly white, as the lifeblood of the reef was drained by warming waters and acidifying tides. And in that moment of death, something impossible happened. The Corsola did not simply vanish. Their spirits, bound to the calcium structures they had built over centuries, refused to leave. They lingered. They became something else. A Galarian Corsola, a ghost of what it once was. This is the heartbreaking lore of Galarian Corsola, a story not of adaptation, but of extinction. In other regions, regional forms celebrate evolution and survival. In Galar, this one is a eulogy. The reefs are gone. The bright pink branches that once swayed in the current have crumbled into dust. All that remains is a pale spectral form, its coral branches brittle and broken, its eyes hollow. The Galarian Corsola is not a new creature thriving in a changed environment. It is a wandering spirit, tethered to a world that no longer supports it. Every step it takes is a reminder of what was lost. And yet even this tragic form does not last. As the environmental grief deepens, the Galarian Corsola undergoes a second transformation. It evolves into Corsola, a being that is almost entirely ethereal, a towering column of ghostly energy with a single mournful eye. The Pokémon Sword Pokédex entry tells us that Corsola's shell is so thin that if it raises its arms, its brittle limbs may shatter. In Pokémon Shield, the entry is even more stark. It says that its life has already ended, and that its spirit is only clinging on out of sheer will. This is not a Pokémon adapting to survive. This is a species being erased, one evolution at a time. How climate change in the Pokémon world led to a ghost-type extinction event is not a metaphor. It is the literal law written into the Pokédex. The Corsola of old no longer exist in Galar. They have been replaced entirely by their ghostly descendants. And because this is a regional form, there is no going back. The Galarian Corsola cannot revert to the original, healthy form. The damage is permanent. In the wild, these Pokémon are condemned to wander the coastal waters of Galar, forever mourning a home that no longer exists. Their evolution into Corsola is not a triumph. It is a manifestation of environmental grief, a curse placed upon the world by the very forces that destroyed the reefs. You can see this tragedy reflected in their design. The Galarian Corsola is frail, almost translucent. Its branches are broken, jagged as if snapped by an unseen hand. The Corsola, in contrast, gains a form that is almost beautiful in its sorrow, a ghostly, crystalline tower that glows with an inner light. But that light is the light of a spirit that has given up. In battle, Corsola is slow, fragile, and its ability, Perish Body, ensures that both it and its opponent will faint after 3 turns. It is a Pokémon that enters battle already resigned to its fate. Its victory condition is not to win, but to drag you down with it. That is the weight of an extinction event. And yet, even in this darkness, there is a lesson. Galarian Corsola and Corsola stand as a warning to the player. They are a cry from the Pokédex, a plea to remember that the world is fragile. The reefs that once teemed with life are now silent graveyards of white coral dust, and the only inhabitants left are the spirits of the dead. It is one of the most haunting stories ever told in a Pokémon game, because it is not fiction. It is the story of our own world, reflected back at us through a screen. The heat, the pollution, the loss, it all feels real because it is. But not every regional form in Galar is a tragedy of loss. Some Pokémon found honor in the changing world, and their stories are woven into the ancient traditions of the region. The next chapter takes us away from the dead reefs and towards a code of conduct that has survived for centuries, one that defines a Pokémon's very evolution. We are about to meet a knight whose blade is sharp, whose shield is strong, and whose heart follows a single unbreakable rule. The knight's code of honor awaits. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. From the ghostly remains of Galar's coral reefs, we now turn to a different kind of survival story. Not born of extinction, but of relentless adaptation and honor. In Galar's harsh wilds, a Pokémon that was once considered a simple, even comical creature evolved into something far more formidable. This is the story of Farfetch'd. But not the Farfetch'd you might remember from Kanto. This is its Galarian form, and the warrior it becomes, Sirfetch'd. The standard Farfetch'd is a bird known for its stubbornness, its wild leek, and its tendency to be hunted for its meat. In Kanto it's a rare sight, almost a delicacy. But in Galar, something changed. The environment itself demanded a different kind of grit. The wild areas of Galar are not gentle. They are sprawling, often inhospitable landscapes, where the weather shifts from sun to storm in moments, where predatory Pokémon lurk in every patch of tall grass. For a small leek-wielding duck, survival was not guaranteed, and so, the Galarian Farfetch'd emerged, a variant that abandoned the normal and flying typing of its Kanto cousin to become a pure fighting type. A bird that fights with its leek not just as a tool, but as a weapon, a shield and a symbol of its unwavering will. This transformation is deeply tied to the weight of the leek. In Galar, the leek that Farfetch'd carries is not merely a convenient snack or a makeshift club. It is a living, growing extension of the Pokémon's own spirit. The lore speaks of a specific kind of leek, the leek that never withers. It is said that only a Farfetch'd that has faced countless battles, that has proven its worth through trial and hardship, can claim such a leek. This is no ordinary vegetable. It is a blade of honor. The leek becomes thicker, heavier, more resilient as the Farfetch'd gains experience. It becomes a symbol of the warrior's journey, a tangible record of every victory, every scar, every moment of discipline. And that is the core of the Knight's Code of Honor. Sirfetch'd, the evolution of Galarian Farfetch'd, is not just a stronger Pokémon. It is a living testament to the ideals of chivalry. Its design evokes a medieval knight in full armor, but the armor is actually its dried, sturdy leek leaves. The leek it wields is not just a sword, it is a lance, a club, a shield. In battle, Sirfetch'd fights with a sense of dignity. It refuses to strike a defenseless opponent. It bows before a worthy foe. It stands firm even in the face of certain defeat. This is not a Pokémon driven by hunger or instinct. This is a Pokémon driven by purpose. How did the harsh wilds of Galar forge this fighting type? The answer lies in the very nature of combat in that region. Unlike the more structured gym challenge, the wild areas force Pokémon to fend for themselves against all manner of threats. A Galarian Farfetch'd learns early that its leek must be more than a crutch. It must become an extension of its own body. The constant sparring with wild Pokémon, the endless duels against the likes of Galarian Meowth, Thievul, or even the occasional Steelix, hones its reflexes. It learns to parry, to thrust, to feint. Over time, the leek hardens. The bird's stance broadens. Its eyes sharpen. And when it finally evolves into Sirfetch'd, it does so with a dramatic flourish of its leaves, now fully dried and layered like chainmail. The leek that never withers has become a true weapon. There is a beautiful parallel here to the Knight's Code of the human world. Just as a medieval knight trained from childhood to wield a sword, so too does a Galarian Farfetch'd train from its first steps to master its leek. But the code also demands restraint. Sirfetch'd will not use its leek to strike an opponent that is already down. It respects the fallen. It offers a moment of silence after a battle. Some trainers report that their Sirfetch'd will even refuse to fight if it senses cowardice in its opponent. This is not a creature of blind violence. It is a creature of principle. The narrative of the leek that never withers is more than a folk tale. It is the very reason Sirfetch'd exists at all. In the wild, a Farfetch'd that cannot find a suitable leek will never evolve. It will remain in its basic form, forever seeking a companion that will not rot, that will not break. And when it finally finds that leek, or rather, when that leek chooses it, the bond is unbreakable. The leek becomes a part of its identity. Sirfetch'd even uses its leek as a shield in battle, holding it aloft to block incoming attacks. The leaves, now dry and tough, can withstand even super effective blows. This warrior's journey is not without its costs. A Sirfetch'd that loses its leek in battle is said to lose its will to fight. It becomes listless, almost melancholy. The leek is not just a weapon, it is a companion, a symbol of everything it has overcome. Trainers in Galar tell stories of Sirfetch'd that have defended their leek with their very lives, refusing to retreat even when outnumbered. This is the Knight's Code of Honor made flesh. And yet, for all its nobility, Sirfetch'd remains a Pokémon of the wild. It does not seek fame or glory. It seeks only the next worthy opponent, the next trial to prove its worth. Its evolution is not a matter of leveling up in a conventional sense. It is a matter of experience, of battle-hardened mastery. No two Sirfetch'd have identical leeks. Each one bears the unique marks of its owner's journey. The nicks, the scuffs, the subtle changes in colour. The leek is a living diary. As we prepare to leave the rolling fields and ancient forests of Galar, our path will soon lead us to the icy shores of a forgotten time, for not all warriors carry a leek. Some carry steel, and their battle cries echo across the ages. Up next in Chapter 12, we will uncover the berserker fury of those who traded honor for destruction, the story of Galarian Meowth and its evolution into Berserker, the berserker Vikings and steel claws. Until then, let the weight of the leek rest easy in your mind, a gentle reminder that even in a world of Pokémon, honor can be forged in the humblest of tools. The Knight's Code of Honor may have defined one branch of Galar's regional evolution, but across the same industrial landscape, an entirely different philosophy was taking shape. One rooted not in chivalry, but in plunder. If Sirfetch'd represented the disciplined warrior, then the Galarian Meowth lineage embodied the wild, untamed raider. And to understand that transformation, we have to begin with the cat itself. Long before Galar, the standard Meowth had carved out a comfortable niche in human society. Its signature move, Payday, was more than a battle tactic, it was a lifestyle. Coins scattered from its attacks, and wherever Meowth went, wealth followed. Trainers prized it for its ability to generate money, and in the Kanto region, Meowth had become synonymous with good fortune and financial gain. But the Galarian variant, that cat walked a different path entirely. You see, Galar's industrial revolution didn't just reshape the landscape. It reshaped the behavior of its native Pokémon, the soot-choked cities, the sprawling factories, the constant clang of steel. All of it demanded a harder, more aggressive survival instinct. For the Galarian Meowth, the old life of charming humans for spare coins was no longer viable. Instead, this Meowth turned to the sea. It abandoned the city streets and joined roaming bands of seafaring raiders, adopting a lifestyle that mirrored the historical Vikings who once terrorized coastal settlements. The payday dream was over. Now it was about taking what you needed, and what you needed in this new environment was armor. The Galarian Meowth developed a distinct iron coating on its face and claws, not through evolution, but through generations of adaptation. Its brow grew thick and bristly, almost like a mane, and its eyes took on a fierce predatory gleam. This was no longer a cat that would purr for pocket change. This was a cat that would raid your ship and leave with your valuables. The turning point comes when the Galarian Meowth evolves into Berserker, and here the connection to Norse mythology becomes unmistakable. Berserker is a name that evokes the Berserker warriors of ancient Scandinavia, fighters who entered battle in a trance-like fury, impervious to pain and fear. But the Pokémon's design goes even deeper. Its body is covered in thick, rusted iron armor, with a helmet-like head crest that mirrors the horned or winged helms, often associated with Viking imagery. Its claws are brutal and oversized, built for tearing through steel, and its eyes, those small glowing red dots, suggest a mind consumed by battle lust. In the Pokédex entries, Berserker is described as a Pokémon that leads its own crew of Meowth on raids across the Galar region. It has a deep connection to the sea, and its iron armor is said to have been forged in the volcanic regions of Galar, further linking it to the harsh industrial environment. But the most telling detail is its type, steel. This is a direct contrast to the normal type Kanto Meowth and the dark type Alolan Meowth, where Kanto's Meowth relied on luck and charm, and Alola's Meowth relied on cunning and arrogance. Galar's Meowth relies on raw, unyielding strength. These three lineages now form a fascinating evolutionary trio. The Kanto Meowth, which evolves into Persian, remains a symbol of luxury and grace. Its sleek body and glowing coin reflect a life of pampered ease. The Alolan Meowth, on the other hand, was brought to the islands by royalty and turned into a dark type, reflecting a snobbish, entitled demeanor. It evolves into a Persian that is equally proud and disdainful. And then there is the Galarian Meowth, which rejects all of that. It has no interest in human approval. It evolves not into a Persian, but into Berserker, a creature that has no counterpart in any other region. This is a unique evolutionary line, a dead end in the best possible sense. What makes Berserker so compelling is how it embodies a cultural shift. The Vikings of our world were not just raiders. They were explorers, traders, and settlers. Their influence spread across Europe and beyond. Similarly, Berserker and its pack of Meowth have carved out a territory in Galar's wilder corners, living by their own code. They are not villains, but survivors. And in a region obsessed with industrial progress and social hierarchy, they represent a primal freedom. This leaves us with a lingering question. If Galar's industrial age has produced such fierce adaptations, what happens when we venture into the region's most remote and untouched wilderness? The Crown Tundra, a frozen expanse at the southern tip of Galar, holds secrets that even the most hardened veteran trainer would find chilling. And those secrets involve legendary Pokémon, beings that have undergone their own radical transformations. That story, however, is one we will explore in the next chapter. And so, from the roaring longships of Berserker and its raiding parties, we turn our gaze northward to the frozen expanse of the Crown Tundra. This is a land of jagged peaks and perpetual snow, where the air itself seems to crackle with an ancient, untamed energy. It is here that the Pokémon world made a discovery that shattered long-held assumptions about legendaries. A discovery that would rewrite the very definition of what a regional form could be. For years, trainers believed that the legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres, were singular, eternal entities, each bound to its elemental essence. But the Crown Tundra held a secret, buried under ice and time. When explorers first stumbled upon a strange, glowing bird with wings of psychic energy, they thought it was a mutation, a trick of the light. But this was no trick. This was the unprecedented discovery of Galarian Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres, three beings that looked familiar, yet felt utterly alien. And here is the truth that sent tremors through the research community. These are not the legendary birds you know. They're not the same species that nests in the Seafoam Islands or patrols the skies of Kanto. These are entirely different Pokémon, sharing nothing more than a name and a superficial resemblance. Think of it like a distant cousin who shares your last name but grew up in a different culture, speaking a different language. The Galarian birds are separate species that evolved in isolation, adapting to the Crown Tundra's harsh, mystical environment. Take the psychic type Articuno, where its Kanto ancestor is a creature of pure ice, a guardian of frozen lakes and frosty air. The Galarian Articuno is a master of psychological warfare. Its wings shimmer with a ghostly light, and its cry is less a song and more a whisper that drills into your mind. It doesn't freeze the landscape, it freezes your thoughts, planting illusions and confusion. Imagine trying to fight a creature that can make you doubt your own senses, that can turn your own memories against you. This is the psychological warfare of the psychic type, Articuno, versus its icy ancestor. The original Articuno freezes your body, the Galarian Articuno freezes your soul, and the contrast doesn't end there. The Galarian Zapdos abandons electricity for fighting spirit, becoming a blazing earthbound sprinter, and the Galarian Moltres trades its life-giving fire for a malevolent dark aura, a harbinger of doom rather than renewal. Each one is a reimagining, a what-if scenario written into the fabric of Galar's frozen frontier. They challenge everything we thought we knew about legendaries, proving that even the most iconic beings are not immune to the forces of adaptation and regional pressure. But the Crown Tundra's secrets are not limited to the sky. Deep beneath the snow, in the shadow of a great castle, something else stirs, a creature of poison and royalty, a being that rules the Isle of Armor with a venomous crown. Its story is one of transformation and tyranny, and it will redefine what it means to be a Galarian form. That tale, the tale of the poisonous king of the Isle of Armor, is waiting for us next, and it is more twisted than any legend we have encountered so far. And so, from the icy peaks of the Crown Tundra, we move to the temperate shores of the Isle of Armor, a place where the air smells of salt and seaweed, and where the wild Pokémon carry a different kind of poison in their veins. Because not every relationship in nature is one of mutual benefit. Sometimes symbiosis goes terribly, irrevocably wrong. You know the classic story of Slowpoke and Shelder. A Shelder bites onto a Slowpoke's tail, and the chemical reaction triggers an evolution into Slowbro. Or if the bite happens on the head, you get Slowking. In Kanto and Johto, this partnership is almost harmonious. The Shelder gains a steady supply of nutrients, and the Slowpoke gains intelligence, or a new appendage that can fight. It's a deal both sides seem to accept. But here in Galar, something is fundamentally different. The Shelder that live along the shores of the Isle of Armor have adapted to a harsher, more competitive environment. They are not the same subspecies as their cousins in other regions. These Shelder have evolved to produce potent neurotoxins, a venom designed to paralyze prey, to dominate rather than coexist. And when one of these Shelder sinks its teeth into a Galarian Slowpoke, the result is not evolution as we know it. It is a hostile takeover. The lore surrounding Galarian Slowbro and Slowking is often described as a chemical reaction gone wrong. Let that phrase sit with you for a moment. A chemical reaction is a precise thing in science, mixing two substances to create a predictable outcome. But in the world of Pokémon, an accidental chemical reaction can unleash something unintended. When a Galarian Shelder clamps down, it injects a stream of toxins directly into the Slowpoke's system. The venom travels along the nerves, reaching the brain. In a normal slowpoke, the bite site becomes a conduit for psychic energy, but here the toxins corrupt that energy. The slowpoke's biology tries to adapt, but the poison twists the adaptation. The result is a slow, agonizing transformation. Galarian Slowbro emerges as a poison and psychic type, a creature whose very cells are saturated with venom. Its shell, the Shellder itself, changes color, becoming a deep purple, a sign of the concentrated toxins brewing within. And here is the horrifying part. The Shellder is no longer a passive hitchhiker. In Galarian Slowbro, the Shellder has begun to take control. It secretes chemicals that alter the Slowbro's mood, making it aggressive and prone to sudden attacks. The tail is now a weapon, dripping with a corrosive poison that can melt armor. But it is in Galarian Slowking that the relationship reaches its most disturbing conclusion. When a Shellder latches onto the head of a Galarian Slowpoke, the venom enters the brain directly. The Slowpoke's mind, already slow and vacant, is overwhelmed. The Shellder does not just inject poison, injects a cocktail of hormones and neurotransmitters that effectively rewrite the host's personality. The Shellder becomes the brain. The original Slowpoke is essentially a puppet, its body controlled by the Shellder's will. Galarian Slowking is often depicted as a terrifying figure in Galar's folklore. It is called the Poisonous King for a reason. Its crown, the Shellder, is now a grotesque, spiky helmet of organic armor. The Shellder has grown massive, its face twisted into a permanent sneer, and the Slowking beneath. It walks with a regal bearing, but its eyes are empty, glazed over. The Shellder speaks through it, commanding it to unleash toxic waves of psychic energy. In battle, Galarian Slowking can fire concentrated blasts of venom from its mouth, and it seems to anticipate every move its opponent makes. That intelligence, that cunning, is not the Slowking's, it is the Shellder's. A parasitic intelligence that has turned a gentle, befuddled Pokémon into a tyrant. This is not a story of evolution, it is a story of invasion. The Isle of Armor, for all its training grounds and dojas, has produced a lineage of Pokémon that are living weapons, their bodies permanently twisted by a symbiotic pact that became a poison pact. And the most unsettling thing is that the Galarian Slowking does not seem to suffer. It is aware, perhaps, in some broken way, but the Shellder's dominance is complete. There are reports from old books in the region of a Galarian Slowking that once ruled a small island, forcing other Pokémon to bring it berries and stones, its Shellder crown cackling with a high-pitched laugh that echoed across the waves. What does this mean for our understanding of regional forms? It means that adaptation is not always positive. Sometimes, the environment forces a species into a corner, and the only way to survive is to forge a symbiosis that is more like slavery. The Galarian Slowpoke didn't choose this. It was a chemical accident, a reaction that went fatally correct. And as we look ahead to other regions where the past itself is a foreign land, we will see even more examples of evolution taking unexpected, sometimes prehistoric, turns. The next time you hear the name Hisui, think of a frontier where time runs backward, and where the poisonous king is only one of many forgotten rulers waiting to be unearthed. But for now, let the venom settle and rest. And then, that chemical reaction, the one that twisted Slowbro and Slowking into something far removed from their Kanto cousins, taught us something profound about regional adaptation. It's not always a gentle shift in fur color or a new diet. Sometimes, a single creature hitching a ride can rewrite an entire evolutionary line. But if you think that was a drastic change, you haven't seen anything yet, because now, we're going to step back in time to the ancient Sinnoh region, before the advent of Pokeballs, before the concept of a trainer even existed. We are going to the land that time forgot. We are going to Hisui. Hisui is not just a region, it's a fossil. It's the Sinnoh we know, but stripped of all modern convenience. The mountains are younger, the forests are denser, and the air itself feels heavier with the weight of myth. In this world, the bond between human and Pokémon was not a partnership. It was a fragile truce. The concept of extinct variants is not just a clever game mechanic, it is a historical record. These are forms that thrived in a harsher, older world, but could not survive the arrival of civilization. They vanished, not because they were weak, but because the world changed faster than they could adapt. Let's think about what it means to be an extinct variant. It's not like an Alolan form, which simply moved to a new island and evolved. It's not like a Galarian form, which adapted to industrial smog. An extinct variant is a window into a lost ecosystem. These Pokémon were so perfectly tuned to their ancient environment that when that environment disappeared, they disappeared with it. They are the Pokémon equivalent of the woolly mammoth. Majestic, powerful and utterly unsuited for the world we now inhabit. Take Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine, for example. In modern times, Growlithe is a loyal fire-type companion, a classic guard dog, but in ancient Hisui, Growlithe was something else entirely. Its fur was thicker, its roar more primal. It didn't just guard homes. It guarded the boundaries between the human world and the wild. The Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine evolved partial rock typing. Why? Because the volcanic cliffs and rocky canyons of Hisui demanded it. They needed to blend into the stone to withstand the brutal weather. Their fire burned hotter, but they also carried the weight of the mountain in their bones. And yet today, you will never see a wild Hisuian Arcanine. They are gone. The volcanic eruptions that shaped their habitat eventually subsided. The climate grew milder, and a new breed of Growlithe took over. The one we know now. It's a quiet extinction, one that happened not with a bang, but with a slow fade. Then there is Hisuian Typhlosion. The Johto Typhlosion is a pure fire type, a volcano incarnate, but in Hisui, the same starter evolution took a different path. It became fire and ghost. Why? Because the ancient Sinnoh region was haunted by the memory of its own violence. The Hisuian Typhlosion channeled the spectral energy of the dead, its flames flickering with an otherworldly light. It was a Pokémon that walked between worlds, a bridge between the living and the departed. But as the region was settled, as humans began to understand death differently, that connection faded. The ghost typing was no longer necessary. The Typhlosion we know today is a simpler creature, one that burns bright without the shadows. The Hisuian variant is a reminder that some powers are too heavy for the modern world to carry. The brutal reality of a world where humans and Pokémon lived in fear of one another is not just a backdrop. It is the very reason these forms existed. In Hisui, a Pokémon was not a pet. It was a force of nature, an unpredictable ally, or a deadly enemy. The Hisuian Quillfish, for instance, was not a mere annoyance in the water. It was a dark and poison type, armed with spines that could poison both body and spirit. It evolved into Overqwil, a Pokémon that could fire its quills like a volley of cursed darts. This was a creature designed for conflict, for survival, in a world where every encounter could be your last. Compare that to the modern Quillfish, which is just a water and poison type, a nuisance you might encounter while surfing. The Hisuian form was a weapon. It did not survive into modernity because the warring sea simply calmed down. Hisuian Gudra is perhaps the most tragic example. The Gudra from Kalos is a pure dragon type, a gentle giant that oozes slime and love. But Hisuian Gudra evolved into a steel and dragon type. It encased itself in a metallic shell, its slime hardening into armor. Why? Because the Hisui region was cold and unforgiving. The metal-rich mountains of the Coronet Highlands provided the resources but also the danger. To survive, Gudra had to become a fortress. It was slower, heavier, but nearly indestructible. And yet, as the glaciers receded and the climate warmed, that adaptation became a burden. The steel shell was too heavy, too cumbersome. The Gudra we know today shed that armor, returning to a softer form. The Hisuian variant is extinct, but its fossils remain in the DNA of the modern species. A reminder that evolution can go both ways, and there is more. Hisuian Zoroark, a normal and ghost type that replaced its illusion ability with a deeper, more malevolent form of deceit. Hisuian Voltorb, an electric and grass type that mimicked apricorns rather than Pokeballs, because there were no Pokeballs to mimic. Hisuian Braviary, a psychic and flying type that abandoned the fierce independence of its Unova cousin for a more mystical, almost shamanic role. Each one of these forms was a perfect answer to a question the world no longer asks. Why did they vanish? Some say it was the arrival of the first settlers. Others blame the changing climate, the shifting of tectonic plates, the rise of new predators. But the most likely answer is that they were simply too specialized. When the environment you are adapted to disappears, you cannot adapt fast enough. The modern world of Pokémon is a world of generalists, of creatures that can thrive in cities, forests, oceans and tundras. The Hisuian forms were specialists. and specialists are the first to go extinct. And yet they are not truly gone. In the depths of the Sinnoh region, in the most remote caves, in the highest peaks, there are whispers of them. Some say that in the mountains, if you listen closely, you can hear the cries of the ones who did not make it. The spirits of those ancient Pokémon still linger, their forms etched into the very landscape. They are the noble spirits of the mountains, watching over a world that moved on without them. We stepped out of the prehistoric wilds of Hisui, with the understanding that these ancient forms were not simply variants, but evolutionary paths that time itself chose to abandon. And yet, not all of those paths were forgotten. Some were preserved, not in the modern Sinnoh region, but in the very stone and ash of the land itself. If you look at a map of ancient Hisui, you will notice that the region is dominated by a massive volcanic mountain range, jagged peaks that spewed plumes of smoke and fire into the sky, and on those slopes, a creature stood guard, a creature that the native people called the King of the Island. Hisuian, Growlithe and Arcanine are not just fire types, they are rock and fire, a combination that immediately tells you something about the world they evolved in. This is not the gentle grassy plains where the Kanto Growlithe roams, nor the temperate forests of Yorto. This is a land of black volcanic glass, of rivers of molten rock, of air thick with ash and sulfur. To survive here, the Growlithe line had to become a part of the mountain itself. Their fur took on the texture of basalt, their body hardened into a living statue, and when they move, they do not simply run. They grind against the earth, leaving trails of dust and sparks. But their role was far more than just survival. These Pokémon were the protectors of the island, the guardians of the people who lived in the shadow of the volcano. They would patrol the rocky slopes, their bark echoing across the valleys, a sound that warned off danger and reassured the villages below. In the ancient texts of Hisui, you can find references to a single Arcanine that was venerated as the king of the island, a creature so powerful and so noble that it was believed to have lived for centuries, its coat slowly turning from the colour of embers to the grey of weathered stone. It was said that this king would descend from the peak only during times of great crisis, and when it did, the ground would tremble and the very mountain would seem to bow. Now, why did this form disappear? Why do modern Sinnoh trainers only know the pure fire type Arcanine? The answer lies in the landscape itself. After the volcanic activity in the region subsided, the terrain began to stabilize. The ash layers were covered by soil, the rocky slopes softened into hills. Without the constant pressure of living on an active volcano, the Growlithe line no longer needed that protective rock shell. Over generations, the stone aesthetic faded, their coats became softer, their bodies leaner. They returned to a more classic form, leaving the ancient rock-type variant as a relic of a more volatile era. It is a poignant reminder that even the mightiest of kings must eventually adapt or be left behind, frozen in time like a statue on a mountainside. And yet that statue still stands, carved into the collective memory of the Pokémon world. When you look at a Hisuian Arcanine, you are seeing the ghost of a time when fire met stone, when the earth itself was alive with danger and awe. And if you listen closely, you might still hear its roar, echoing through the mountains, calling out to something beyond this world. Perhaps that roar is a bridge to another kind of flame, one that burns not with heat, but with the cold fire of the afterlife. That is exactly where we are heading next, into the ghostly flames of the afterlife, where another ancient spirit waits to be remembered. And so, after exploring the rugged volcanic peaks, where Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine once reigned as the noble protectors of ancient Hisui, we now turn our gaze to a different kind of flame, not the roaring, protective fire of a guardian, but a quiet, ghostly ember that flickers at the edge of the spirit world. This is the story of Hisuian Typhlosion. In the ancient Sinnoh that we call Hisui, the energy of Mount Coronet was far more than just a geological feature. It was a spiritual axis, a place where the veil between the living world and the afterlife grew thin. The people of the Pearl and Diamond clans spoke of wandering spirits that could not find their way to the next realm, lost souls caught between mountains and sky. And in those shadowed valleys, a particular Pokémon emerged to guide them. Hisuian Typhlosion is not the aggressive, fiery berserker we know from Johto. That Typhlosion, the standard form, burns with an inner rage, its back erupting in furious flames that scorch the battlefield. But here, in the ancient past, the environment demanded a different adaptation. The volcanic ash and the constant presence of spiritual energy from Mount Coronet shaped a Typhlosion that learned to harness ghostly fire instead of pure heat. Its flames became pale, ethereal, almost translucent, like the light of a lantern carried through a misty graveyard. This is a fire and ghost type, and the ghostly nature is not incidental. Hisuian Typhlosion acts as a guide for wandering spirits. When a soul becomes lost after death, unable to accept its passing or confused by the endless forests and rocky passes of Hisui, this Typhlosion appears. It does not attack the spirit. Instead, it walks beside it, its ghostly flames providing a soft, unearthly light that only the lost can see. The fire does not burn the living, it warms the dead. It is said that if you ever find yourself lost in a fog of grief or confusion, and you see a faint purple-blue glow approaching, you are being led home by a Typhlosion that remembers its ancient duty. The connection to Mount Coronet is not just lore. The volcanic peaks of Hisui are rich in a mineral that resonates with ghostly energy, a kind of natural spirit conduit. When a Cyndaquil evolved in the shadow of Mount Coronet, the ash that fell upon its back carried traces of this mineral. As it grew into Quilliver and then Typhlosion, the flames themselves changed. They stopped being pure combustion and became something more like a spectral emission. The fire became a bridge, and this gentle, guiding nature stands in stark contrast to the Yoto Typhlosion we know today. In modern times, the spiritual energies of Mount Coronet have faded, or perhaps the people have simply forgotten how to see them. Without that ancient connection, Typhlosion lost its ghostly aspect. The flames turned orange and hot. The creature became more aggressive, more competitive. Where the Hisuian Typhlosion would silently accompany a lost soul through the darkest night, the Johto Typhlosion would burn its way through any obstacle. It is almost as if the modern form is an echo of what once was, a memory of a more peaceful time, hardened by centuries of survival. Without the guiding presence of the mountain's spiritual currents, there is a quiet tragedy in this transformation. The Hisuian Typhlosion, now extinct in the wild, only exists in the records of the past, and in the occasional encounter with a Typhlosion that still carries that ancient gene deep within. Those who have seen both forms describe the Hisuian variant as almost mournful. Its eyes are not fierce but knowing. It does not roar, it sighs. And when it releases its ghostly flames, the sound is not a crackle of fire, but a whisper like wind through dry leaves. So, as we prepare to leave these ancient lands, we must remember that every flame tells a story, and sometimes the gentlest fire is the one that guides the lost home. But not all ancient seas are quiet. There is another variant that hides beneath the waves, a creature whose shell may not be made of stone, but of iron, and that story awaits in our next chapter, the iron shell of the ancient sea. And it is in that same ancient Hisui, amidst the volcanic peaks and the spirit-haunted slopes of Mount Coronet, that we find another creature whose form was shaped by forces now lost to time. But while Typhlosion walked the line between fire and ghost, this Pokémon chose a different path, one forged in iron and sorrow, Hisuian Gudra. Even the name sounds heavier than its modern counterpart. This is not the gentle, slimy dragon we know from the Kalos region. This is a beast of burden, a living fortress, a creature that carried the weight of its own evolution on its back. Literally, the key to understanding this variant lies in the wetlands of ancient Sinnoh, but not the soft, marshy wetlands we might imagine. No, these were iron-rich bogs, mineral-choked estuaries where the water ran metallic and the ground was sharp with rust. You see, the Gumi line, in its original form, is a creature of pure moisture and softness. Its body is mostly water. Its defense relies on slimy coatings and evasive maneuvers. But in ancient Hisui, the environment was different. The volcanic activity had leached heavy metals into the soil and water, iron, manganese, even traces of chromium. The Gumi that lived here had to adapt or dissolve, and adapt they did by absorbing these minerals into their own bodies until their cells became laced with metal. Over generations, this biological accumulation turned their mucus into a kind of liquid steel. And then, as they evolved into Sliggoo and finally Gudra, that liquid steel hardened into an actual shell, not a shell like a shelder or a cloister, but something far more melancholy. The people of Hisui called it the melancholy shell, a curved iron-scaled carapace that covered the creature's back and head, leaving only its expressive eyes and the tip of its tail exposed. And it was called Melancholy not because the Pokémon was sad, but because the shell itself seemed to absorb light and sound, creating an aura of heaviness, of quiet resignation. Perhaps it was the weight. An adult Hisuian Gudra's shell could weigh nearly half a ton, composed of dense metallic alloys that would make a modern steelworker pause in awe. This shell was not merely protective, it was a weapon. The steel typing gave Gudra a hardness that its modern relatives lack entirely. Where a regular Gudra might rely on Dragon Pulse or Rain Dance to outlast an opponent, the Hisuian variant would simply absorb blows, then retaliate with devastating steel-type attacks like Iron Head or Flash Cannon. The wetlands echoed with the clang of its shell, deflecting attacks from rampaging Ursaluna or territorial Overqwil. But here is the tragedy. As the climate of Hisui changed, as the volcanic activity quieted, and the iron-rich bogs gave way to clearer waters, the conditions that created the melancholy shell began to fade. The gumi that remained in the region started to lose their metallic affinity. The shell became thinner, then hollow, then eventually vanished entirely. By the time the modern Sinnoh region came to be, the Hisuian Gudra line had disappeared. Its descendants in Kalos and elsewhere shed the shell, adopting a completely different defensive strategy, one based on mobility, regeneration, and sheer slimy persistence. Think about it. The loss of the shell meant losing not just a physical armor, but an entire way of life. Modern Gudra are solitary, gentle giants that rely on friendship and trust to form bonds. Hisuian Gudra, by contrast, was a creature of solitude by necessity. Its shell was too heavy to allow for playful movement, too dense for social grooming. It became a living fortress, but in that fortress, it was always alone. And yet, in the deep bogs of ancient Hisui, there was another Pokémon that took the path of darkness and thorns instead of iron and tears. A fish, or something like a fish, that evolved into a creature of pure venom and rage. But that story, the story of the dark depths of Overqwil, is one we will sink into next. From the iron-clad melancholy of Hisuian Gudra, we now descend into the blackened waters of the ancient Hisuian Sea. The same environment that forced a dragon to armor itself in metal also bred something far more sinister beneath the waves. Where the wetlands were rich with minerals, the ocean currents were thick with shadow. A realm where the weak were devoured and the strong grew savage. And in those depths, a creature that once seemed ordinary transformed into a nightmare known as the Sea Fiend. This is the story of Hisuian Qwilfish and its evolution into Overqwil. You might recall the standard qwilfish from the modern Johto region, a balloon-like fish covered in spikes, known for its poison and its habit of puffing up to intimidate predators. In the ancient waters of Hisui, however, that same puffing defense wasn't enough. The seas were choked with predators that had adapted to every trick, so Qwilfish changed. Its poison became darker, its temperament more vicious, and when it evolved, it shed any semblance of caution for pure, unrelenting aggression. The evolution of Hisuian Qwilfish into Overqwil is not a gentle metamorphosis. In the games, it requires the Pokémon to use the move Barb Barrage in its strong style 20 times, a mechanical requirement that reflects a brutal truth. This creature must repeatedly prove its ferocity to unlock its final form. Overqwil emerges as a spiked monstrosity, its body almost entirely covered in barbs, its eyes wild with rage. It is not a Pokémon you would want to encounter on a moonless night, and the people of Hisui did not want to encounter it at all. This is key to understanding why Overqwil is not found in the modern world. The Hisuian form of Qwilfish and its evolution were hunted to the point of extinction, or at least driven so deep into hiding that they vanished from recorded history. Why? Because Overqwil was a terror. Its spikes carried a venom that could paralyze a full-grown man in seconds. Its behavior was relentlessly aggressive, known to attack fishing boats and tear through nets without hesitation. In a region where survival already hung by a thread, the Sea Fiend was a threat that could not be tolerated. The people of Hisui, the clans, the Survey Corps, the Pearl and Diamond tribes, they all saw Overqwil as a danger to their livelihoods and their lives, so they hunted it systematically and without mercy. And the Poison Dark typing tells you everything about why this predator was so feared. Poison alone would make it dangerous, but the Dark type adds a layer of cunning and malice. The ancient ocean was not just poisonous, it was treacherous. There were no rules, no mercy, only the cold calculus of predator and prey. Overqwil embodied that darkness. It didn't just sting, it struck from the shadows, waited in the murky depths, and struck again without warning. Its typing is a perfect representation of the treacherous ancient seas of Hisui. A world where the sun rarely reached the ocean floor, where the water was black as ink, and where every creature had to be as ruthless as the environment itself. Yet even the most fearsome predator can be undone by the fear it inspires. Overqwil was too aggressive, too dangerous to coexist with the people of Hisui, so it was extinguished, driven into the deepest trenches, where no human would follow. Over time, the population dwindled. The genes that had once been so advantageous became a curse, and when the Hisui region became modern Sinnoh, the sea had changed. The water was clearer, the predators fewer, the humans more numerous. The standard quillfish, calmer, less aggressive, survived. The Hisuian form, the sea fiend, was gone, but its legacy lingers in the lore of the Pokémon world, in the spines of every quillfish you see in Johto or beyond, somewhere in the abyssal trenches of the ancient seas. Perhaps a few Overqwil still drift in the darkness, waiting for the day when the seas grow treacherous once more. And as we rise from those dark depths, we find ourselves face to face with another mystery of the Hisuian waters, a fish with a single white stripe, whose origins are tangled in a story that has yet to be fully told. A creature that defied easy classification, whose very existence raises more questions than answers. What happened to the white-striped basculin? Why does its form seem to whisper of a connection that was lost? We will chase that ghost next. But for now, let the quiet waves of the ancient sea carry you further into sleep, knowing that even the most terrifying predators have passed into legend. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. From the dark depths of Overqwil, we now turn to another enigmatic creature of Hisui's waters, the white-striped basculin. This fish seems at first glance like a simple colour variation of the familiar basculin found in Unova and later regions. But there's a mystery woven into its very existence, one that challenges our understanding of what a regional form truly is. You see, while most regional variants are adaptations to a new environment over time, the white-striped basculin occupies a strange middle ground. Is it truly a regional form of the standard basculin, or is it a separate species entirely, hidden in plain sight until the era of legends? Arceus? The debate is not merely academic. It touches on the very nature of evolution and the forces that shape life in the Pokémon world. To understand this puzzle, we must look at the habitat. Hisui's rivers are not gentle streams. They are fierce, unpredictable currents that carve through ancient rock, swollen with meltwater from the Coronet Highlands. Survival here demands more than just strength. It demands something almost supernatural. The standard basculin, with its aggressive temperament and streamlined body, is a capable swimmer, but even it would struggle against the relentless torrents of Hisui. The white-striped variety, however, seems to have forged a deeper connection with the river itself, almost as if it draws power from the souls of those who have been lost to the waters. This is where the story becomes haunting. When a white-striped basculin evolves, it does not become a larger, more powerful fish. Instead, it transforms into Basculegion, a creature that embodies the collective energy of its fallen comrades. The lore suggests that these basculin migrate upstream, and many perish along the way, their spirits lingering in the current. The survivor that reaches the destination absorbs these souls, its body becoming a vessel for the memories of the departed. Basculegion is not just a Pokémon, it is a guardian of the river's history, a living monument to the cycle of life and death in Hisui's waters. Its typing, water and ghost, reflects this duality. The spectral energy of the fallen gives it supernatural strength, allowing it to navigate even the most treacherous rapids with ease. But does this process elevate the white-striped basculin to the status of a regional form? In other cases, like Alolan Vulpix or Galarian Meowth, the changes are purely physical and ecological, adaptations to climate or diet. Here, the transformation is intertwined with a spiritual journey, a rite of passage that seems unique to this lineage. Some scholars argue that the white-striped Basculin is merely a colour morph with a special evolutionary trigger, not a true regional variant. Others point to the distinct evolutionary line. Paldean has no equivalent in other regions, and suggest that this branch diverged from the common ancestor long ago, making it a separate species that simply resembles its distant cousin. The debate remains unresolved, and that ambiguity is part of what makes Hisui's aquatic life so fascinating. What is certain is that the harsh currents of Hisui demanded this supernatural level of strength. Without the ability to harness the spirits of the fallen, a Basculin could never complete the journey upstream to spawn. The power of Basculegion is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And in that necessity, the fingerprints of Hisui's unforgiving environment, pressing evolution in a direction that modern Sinnoh no longer supports. Perhaps that is why white-striped Basculin seem to have vanished from the present day. Or perhaps they still swim in hidden lakes, waiting for the right conditions to reveal themselves again. As we leave the rivers of Hisui behind, we find ourselves on the cusp of a new era, where the number of known Pokémon reaches a milestone never before imagined. 1,000 species, each with its own story, and among them, a new set of forms that challenge everything we thought we knew about adaptation and regional identity. The journey is far from over. From the souls of fallen comrades that gave rise to Basculegion, we now step into a region where the very land itself feels alive with history and tradition. The shifting currents of Hisui eventually settle into the modern world, and with that transition, we enter the era of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. This is Paldea, a region inspired by the sun-soaked Iberian Peninsula, where the concept of regional forms takes on a new, more complex meaning. It was late 2022, when the National Pokédex officially reached a milestone that had been building for nearly 3 decades, the 1,000th Pokémon. That number, 1,000, is not just a count. It represents the culmination of generations of design, storytelling, and the ever-expanding world of Pokémon. And yet the arrival of Paldean forms did not come as a simple addition to that list. Instead, they arrived as a testament to how far the idea of adaptation had come. In Paldea, regional forms are not merely about environment or climate, they about culture, about tradition, about the deliberate shaping of life over centuries. The shift becomes clear when you examine the landscape. Paldea is a land of vast plains, towering mountains, and coastal vineyards, but it is also a region defined by its people's relationship with Pokémon. Here, the concept of breeds takes center stage. Unlike the natural selection that produced Alolan forms or the industrial pressures of Galar, Paldean forms often stem from intentional breeding programs, from traditions passed down through generations of trainers and ranchers. It is a region where the bond between human and Pokémon has been codified into distinct lines, where a species like Tauros can diverge into multiple breeds, not because of climate, but because of purpose. 3 breeds of Paldean Tauros exist: Combat, Blaze, and Aqua. Each one reflects the role it was bred to serve: fighter, fire wielder, water tamer. These are not accidental mutations. They are the results of careful selection, of a culture that has refined its livestock over hundreds of years. And yet, despite this human influence, the Pokémon themselves have adapted to the wilds of Paldea in ways that feel both familiar and new. Consider the humble Wooper, a creature that in other regions thrives in water. In Paldea, it has taken on a poison and ground typing, a shift that speaks to the muddy, mineral-rich soils of the region's wetlands. The Paldean Wooper is not a mistake of nature. It is a deliberate adaptation to a land where the water is thick with clay and the ground holds ancient secrets. The arrival of Paldean forms also marks the moment when the National Pokédex crossed the 1,000 mark. That milestone is not merely a number. It represents the franchise's ability to keep reinventing itself while staying true to its roots. The 1,000th Pokémon, Coldengo, is itself a form of evolution, a ghostly metallic treasure that emerges from a coin-based evolution line, but it is the regional forms that carry the deeper narrative weight. They show us that even as the Pokédex grows, the world itself is still being written. In Paldea, the traditions of breeding and cultural identity run so deep that even the starters, Brigatito, Huecoco, Quaxley, are not regional forms themselves, but they exist alongside new variants of old favourites. The The Paldean forms are few in number compared to Alola or Galar, but each one carries a story that ties directly to the region's history. There is no single environmental gimmick here. Instead, there is a mosaic of local practices, of festivals and routines that have shaped Pokémon over generations. As we prepare to leave the sunny plains of Paldea and look toward the muddy paths that lie ahead, we must remember that the journey through regional forms is not over. The next chapter will take us deep into the wetlands, where a simple, smiling creature has found a new way to survive. That creature is the Paldean Wooper, and its path is anything but ordinary. But for now, let the warmth of the Iberian sun settle over you, and let the 1000th milestone remind you that every number, every form, every breed has a story worth hearing. And so we step into the generation that gave the franchise its 1000th Pokémon. A milestone that could have been celebrated with something grandiose, something legendary. Instead, the honor went to a humble four-legged creature with a single unblinking eye and an impossibly cheerful expression. Voldengo, the coin entity, is a story for another time, but its arrival alongside the Paldean forms signaled something important. That even in a world of 1,000 species, there is always room for a new twist on the old. Among those twists, none captured the public imagination quite like Paldean Wooper. At first glance, it seems like a simple palette swap, a shift from blue to brown, a loss of the gills. But the story of how a tiny, axolotl-like amphibian ended up wading through muddy fields rather than clear streams is a tale of ecological warfare, desperate adaptation, and a chemical defense so potent that it rewrote its entire evolutionary line. To understand Paldean Wooper, you have to understand the water wars of the Paldea region. The area that would become its home was once dominated by a thriving population of aquatic Pokémon, Quagsire, Swampert, and other water and ground types that claimed the rivers and lakes as their own. For a standard Wooper, those waters were its birthright. But as the climate shifted and the land dried, competition for shrinking resources became brutal. The Wooper found itself outmatched, outmuscled, and ultimately forced onto the muddy banks. It wasn't a choice, it was a retreat. A tiny, soft-bodied Pokémon, suddenly stranded on land with no way to breathe properly and no protection from predators. That desperation is etched into its very biology. To survive the harsh, dry air and the constant threat of being picked off by bird Pokémon, Paldean Wooper began secreting a thick, poisonous film across its skin. This film, a mix of toxic oils and bacteria, didn't just keep its body moist, it made it deadly to touch. Over generations, that adaptation became permanent. The gills, once essential for aquatic life, atrophied and disappeared, replaced by a tough, more terrestrial hide. And the poison. It changed the Wooper's very nature, shifting its type from water and ground to poison and ground. It became a living hazard, a creature that could no longer swim, but could poison anything that tried to bite it. This transformation was not an evolution in the scientific sense of the word. Not yet. It was an adaptation, a regional form that existed in a delicate balance. For years, the Paldean Wooper lived in these muddy fields, its single eye scanning the horizon, its skin glistening with a faint purple sheen. It was a survivor, but it was also a dead end. The poisonous film kept it alive, but it also stunted its growth. Without a viable predator to pressure it into the next stage, it stayed small, harmless in appearance, a landlocked reminder of a lost aquatic heritage. Then came the need for defense on a larger scale. In the depths of Paldea's wetlands, where the mud turns to bog and the fog rolls in thick, something stirred. The Wooper that grew large enough, or perhaps desperate enough, began to absorb the very toxins they secreted into their own bodies, crystallizing them into a formidable armor. This was the birth of Clodsire, the spiny defender. Where its predecessor was a victim of territorial loss, Clodsire is a fortress. Its back is lined with spines that drip with concentrated venom, and its entire body is built like a battering ram, low to the ground and impossibly sturdy. The lore from the ancient texts of Paldea speaks of Clodsire as a guardian of the marshlands, a creature that would use its immense weight and poisonous barbs to drive away anything that threatened its territory. It had finally reclaimed what its ancestors lost, not by winning back the water, but by becoming so unassailable that no predator dared challenge it. That is the story of a species that turned loss into power. But why did Paldean Wooper become the face of a whole regional form movement. It's not just the design, though that blank, cheerful stare has spawned countless memes. It's because Paldean Wooper represents a shift in how Game Freak approached regional variants. Alolan forms were about tropical adaptation. Galarian forms were about industrial influence. Hisuian forms were about ancient extinction. But Paldean Wooper, it's about narrative. It has a story you can feel. You see it on the mudflats, you know it lost a war, and you root for it as it evolves into a literal tank. It's accessible, it's tragic, and it's utterly adorable. In a generation that introduced Paradox Pokémon, Titan Pokémon, and the whole concept of open-world exploration, the simple, muddy path of a little poison type struck a chord. It reminds us that even the smallest Pokémon have histories worth digging into. And as we prepare to leave the bogs of Paldea behind, we turn our sights to another set of regional forms that tell a very different kind of story. One of selective breeding, rivalries, and 3 distinct breeds defined by their horns and their temperaments. That is the tale of the 3 breeds of Tauros, and it is a story that begins not with the loss of territory, but with the very foundation of the Paldea region's pastoral culture. And so, from the muddy banks of Paldea's rivers, we turn our gaze to the sprawling plains and ranches that define the region's heartland, where Paldean Wooper adapted to a landbound existence through a poisonous film. Another creature underwent a far more deliberate transformation. One, shaped not by ecological pressure alone, but by human hands and centuries of tradition. The Tauros of Paldea are not a single form, but 3 distinct breeds: Combat, Blaze, and Aqua. Each embodies a different facet of the region's ranching culture, a culture that has, over generations, molded a single species into a living toolkit for the diverse needs of Paldean life. Think of it as selective breeding taken to its logical extreme, where the wild, aggressive Tauros of Kanto found a new home in a land that demanded specialization. Why 3 breeds? Because the Paldean ranching economy is built on variety. In the sun-scorched west, where fires regularly sweep the grasslands, a breed that thrives in heat and smoke emerged. The Blaze breed, its mane crackling with embers, its hide hardened against flame. In the coastal lowlands, where rivers meet the sea, another lineage took to water, becoming the Aqua breed, sleek and powerful, able to herd aquatic Pokémon or pull fishing boats against the tide. And in the central plains, where battles and competitions are a way of life, the Combat breed stands as the epitome of raw, unadulterated strength, its horns sharper, its muscles denser, its temperament fierce. But here's where the story deepens. These are not just cosmetic differences. Each breed carries a unique fighting type secondary typing. Fighting and fire, fighting and water, and pure eating with a different stat distribution for the Combat breed. This isn't accidental. It reflects the environmental pressures that the ranching culture deliberately introduced. By isolating herds in different biomes and selectively breeding only those that thrived, Paldean farmers created 3 distinct tools for 3 distinct jobs. And yet, the most intriguing part of this tale lies hidden. Not all Tauros are born equal, even within the same breed. There are rare hidden variants, ones that appear only under specific conditions, often found only in the wild when you least expect them. If you explore the southwestern province, near the cliffs overlooking the sea, you might encounter a Blaze Tauros with a differently coloured mane, or an Aqua breed that seems to shimmer even in the dimmest light. These are not separate breeds, but genetic throwbacks, whispers of the original Kanto Tauros that still linger in the bloodline. They are incredibly difficult to track down, appearing only in certain seasons or under certain weather patterns. Collectors and ranchers alike spend years trying to spot one, and their elusiveness adds a layer of mystery to a creature that otherwise seems so thoroughly domesticated. So what does this tell us about regional forms? That cultural pressure can be just as powerful as natural selection. In Paldea, the Tauros species didn't adapt to a new island or an ancient climate. They adapted to human needs, and in doing so, they became a mirror of the region's identity. A living testament to the bond between Pokémon and people. But not every regional variation follows this path. Some come from completely different evolutionary lines. Species that are unrelated, yet eerily similar in form and function, a phenomenon that challenges our very definition of what a regional form is. That mystery, The tension between convergent evolution and true regional adaptation is a story for another time. Specifically, it's the story of Chapter 24, Convergent Evolution versus Regional Forms. But for now, let the image of 3 herds of Tauros, one charging through smoke, one diving beneath the waves, one locking horns in the center of a dusty arena, settle in your mind as you drift deeper into the lore of the Paldean frontier. So we've spent time with the 3 breeds of Paldean Tauros, watching how a single species fractured into distinct forms shaped by the ranching culture of a new region. It's a clear example of adaptation within the same lineage. But what happens when a Pokémon looks like something it's not? What happens when evolution, or rather the forces of nature, play a trick on us? This is where the story of regional forms takes a turn into something far more subtle and far more fascinating. You see, not every Pokémon that resembles a familiar face is actually related to it. In the wilds of Paldea, you might stumble upon a curious little creature that looks like a Diglett. It has the same brown mole-like body, the same stubby nose, the same way of poking out of the ground. But this is Wiglet, and Wiglet is not a regional variant of Diglett. It is something else entirely. The scientific distinction here is crucial. Regional forms are alternate versions of the same species that have adapted to different environments. Alolan Vulpix and Galarian Meowth are still Vulpix and Meowth at their core. Wiglet, on the other hand, is a separate species that evolved to resemble Diglett independently. This is convergent evolution in action. 2 unrelated lineages arriving at a similar solution to the same environmental pressures. Think about it. Diglett lives underground, using its shape to burrow and evade predators. In Paldea, a different ancestor faced similar challenges. The need to hide, to move through soil, to avoid being seen. Over countless generations, that ancestor's descendants molded themselves into a Diglett-like form, but their DNA tells a different story. They are not cousins. They are strangers wearing the same coat. This is the narrative twist. Nature mimics successful designs across different lineages, like an architect borrowing a blueprint from another company. It happens all over the Pokémon world. But until recently, we never had a name for it: convergent species, a term that separates true regional variants from mere lookalikes. And the examples don't stop with Wiglet. Consider Toedscool. At first glance, it is unmistakably a Tentacool, a jellyfish-like Pokémon with a blue bell and dangling tentacles. But Toedscool is not a regional form of Tentacool. It belongs to a completely different evolutionary line. The same goes for Poltergeist, which appears to be a variant of Sinistea, the teacup Pokémon. Yet Poltergeist is not Galarian or Paldean Sinistea. It is a convergent species, a separate creature that evolved to fill a similar niche. Why? Because the design is successful. A floating teacup that holds a spirit. That's a winning formula. Nature, or the Pokémon world's equivalent, loves a good recipe, and it will cook it again with different ingredients. This distinction matters because it changes how we understand the history of life in these regions. Regional forms tell us about migrations and adaptations within a single family tree. Convergent species tell us about the power of environment to shape form independently. It's a reminder that not everything that looks familiar is family. Sometimes resemblance is just a coincidence, a result of 2 paths crossing the same forest. And as we prepare to move from the field of biology to the realm of cardboard and ink, we find that these forms, regional and convergent alike, have left a rich legacy. In the trading card game, from the sun-soaked islands of Alola to the industrial workshops of Galar, every variant tells a story. The next chapter will unwrap that legacy, exploring how the mechanics of the cards mirror the lore of the creatures. But for now, let the distinctions settle. Not every doppelganger is a relative. The Pokémon world is full of echoes, and some echoes are just new voices singing the same old song. From the scientific distinction between convergent species like Wiglet and true regional forms, we now shift our focus to another realm entirely. The world of the Pokémon trading card game. Here, the legacy of regional variants is written not in game code or biology textbooks, but in the texture of cardstock, the cost of an attack, and the subtle choices made by designers sitting in a room years before a set ever releases. The TCG is not merely a mirror of the video games. It has its own evolutionary history, its own fossil record, And when you trace the mechanics of Alolan, Galarian, Hisuian, and Paldean cards, you find a story of rise and fall that no Pokédex entry ever tells. It begins with Generation 7, with the arrival of Alolan forms. The Sun and Moon series of the TCG debuted in early 2017, and with it came a quiet revolution, attacks that cost 0 energy to use. You could flip a card over, read the text, and see a move that required no energy attachments at all. For the first time since the Heart Gold and Soul Silver series, this mechanic returned. Alolan Vulpix offered Freezing Wind for 0 energy, letting you paralyze an opponent's Pokémon right from the bench. Alolan Rattata had Focus Energy, setting up future damage. Alolan Marowak could perform Bone Rush, without attaching a single energy card. These were not overpowered moves. They were utility, efficiency, a nod to the idea that regional adaptation had granted these Pokémon an edge. A free action that their original counterparts lacked. The TCG was telling you that Alola had changed these species fundamentally, and that change came at no cost. But the rise of this regional-specific mechanic was not sustained. When Galarian forms arrived in Sword and Shield sets, the 0 energy attacks vanished entirely. Galarian Meowth, Galarian Weezing, Galarian Darmanitan, none of them carried that free cost. Instead, the Galarian cards focused on different gimmicks. VMAX forms, abilities tied to the industrial theme, status conditions. The mechanic that had defined Alolan forms in the TCG simply disappeared, like a species that failed to adapt to a new environment. No official explanation was ever given, but the pattern was clear. The free attack was a feature of the Alolan region alone, not a permanent hallmark of regional variants. Then came the Hisuian forms in 2022, and with them a remarkable resurrection. The Legends Arceus set brought back the 0 energy attack mechanic, and it did so with a deliberate sense of nostalgia. Hisuian Growlithe could use Flame Charge for no cost. Hisuian Quillfish could fire Pin Missile freely. Hisuian Typhlosion had a 0 energy attack called Fire Blast that dealt 20 damage. Why return to this mechanic for the ancient forms? Because the TCG was preserving something the video games could not. The idea that these are forms from a lost era, preserved in card form for modern players. When you hold a Hisuian card with a free attack, you are holding a connection to Alola, the first generation of regional variants. The designers were creating a lineage, a mechanical echo across time. The extinct forms of Sinnoh's past shared a mechanic with the tropical forms of Alola, as if to say that both were outliers, both were experiments in adaptation, that the present day had moved past. But the fall was coming. When Paldean forms debuted in the Scarlet and Violet series in late 2022, the 0 energy attacks were discontinued for regional variants. Paldean Wooper, Paldean Tauros, the new forms of an ancient region, none of them received the free attack treatment. The mechanic was extinct again, perhaps permanently. The rise and fall of regional specific abilities in the TCG mirrors the narrative of adaptation itself. Some traits are useful in one environment, useless in another, and doomed to vanish. The TCG does not just reflect the lore. It lives evolving with each new generation. Yet even as the mechanic faded, the TCG ensured that the lore of Hisuian forms remained vivid. Each card carries flavor text. Hisuian Growlithe's card reads, "It roams the volcanic region, baring its fangs." Hisuian Arcanine's card describes the Rockruff that once lived alongside it. The cards are artifacts now, records of a world that no longer exists in the modern Pokémon timeline, for players who never experienced Legends. Arceus, the TCG becomes a museum, a quiet archive where extinct forms can still be drawn from a booster pack, still played in a match, still felt in the hand. The 0 energy attacks are the final whisper of that lost age, a mechanical ghost that haunts the card game's history. And so from Alola to Paldea, the TCG has tracked a path of innovation, abandonment, revival, and final retirement. It is a cycle that feels almost biological. But what about the animated world? How has the anime chosen to tell the story of these forms, from the sunlit beaches of Alola to the misty highlands of Hisui? That perspective, told through the eyes of trainers like Ash and the new protagonists of Horizons, reveals a different kind of evolution, one of character and emotion. That is the thread we will pull next, in Chapter 26, the anime's perspective. From the card game's mechanical evolution, we now turn to where regional forms truly come alive, the anime. And here the story of adaptation becomes personal, emotional, even revolutionary. Because while the games and trading cards gave us the rules, the anime gave us the souls of these creatures. And it did so in two very different eras: the Alola of Sun and Moon, and the wider world of Pokémon Horizons. Let's begin on the islands of Alola, where regional diversity wasn't just a gimmick, it was the entire identity of the region. The Sun and Moon series didn't just introduce Alolan forms, it built an entire culture around them. Every episode, every character, every wild encounter celebrated the idea that Pokémon changed to match their home. You saw it in the way Alolan Executor towered over the jungle, its long neck a necessity for reaching the sun-drenched canopy. You heard it in the crackling energy of Alolan Raichu, surfing on electricity that had absorbed the island's tropical vibes. But the show's real genius was how it let these variants prove their superiority over the standard forms. Take the episode where Ash's Pikachu faced off against an Alolan Raichu. The local Raichu used its psychic-type surges to levitate and dodge, turning the battlefield into a three-dimensional dance. Pikachu, a standard electric type, struggled to land a hit. It was a clear lesson. The Alolan form wasn't just different, it was better suited to the environment. The surfing, the moon-based evolution, the tie to the region's energy, these weren't cosmetic, they were survival traits honed over generations. And then there was the emotional weight of Ash's own Alolan team. He didn't just catch regional variants, he bonded with outsiders. Consider his Lycanroc, a Rockruff that evolved into the rare midday form, but not before wrestling with its own volatile temper. That arc wasn't about stats, it was about trust. Or his Alolan Muk, a Pokémon others might dismiss as a pile of sludge, but which Ash saw as a loyal and powerful ally. The anime gave these forms a heart. When Lycanroc finally mastered its fury and landed the winning blow in a major battle, it wasn't a victory for a type chart. It was a victory for every Pokémon that had ever been called different. The Sun and Moon series also introduced the concept of totem Pokémon, overgrown, aura-boosted variants that tapped into the island's natural energy. Those battles were the show's way of saying that regional adaptation can create genuine powerhouses, not just palette swaps. And let's not forget the emotional goodbye at the end of Ash's Alola journey, where he left behind a team that had grown with him through sun, sand, and storm. That farewell carried the weight of every unexpected friendship. Every moment a regional outsider became family. Now fast forward to Pokémon Horizons, a series that took the concept of regional diversity and spread it across an entire globe. Here, the show didn't have one Ash. It had a cast of characters traveling through Paldea, Galar, and beyond, and the regional forms became markers of culture and history. Take the episode where the heroes encountered a Galarian Meowth, a steel type with sharp, armor-like fur, bred for the industrial air of its homeland. The episode contrasted that with a standard Meowth from Kanto, and the difference wasn't just visual. The Galarian variant could withstand heavy impacts, and even resisted poison attacks, a direct result of the region's polluted past. The message was clear: regional forms are not arbitrary. They are the visible scars and strengths of a land story. But Horizons did something even bolder. It showed regional variants proving their superiority in real time. In battles where strategy and environment mattered, there's a remarkable sequence where a trainer standard Pikachu struggled against a Paldean Wooper, the poison ground type that had adapted to dry soil by developing a toxic film. The Paldean Wooper didn't just have different moves, it had a different survival instinct, one that allowed it to thrive where its cousins would wither. The anime used that moment to teach a quiet lesson. Adaptation isn't weakness, it's evolution in action. And then there's the emotional core of the series. The bond between the protagonist, Liko, and her first Pokémon, Sprigatito, a Paldean starter that embodies the region's diverse breeding traditions. But the show also introduced older regional forms as mentors, like a Hisuian Zoroark that appeared in a flashback, teaching the value of ancient adaptations. That Zoroark, with its ghost typing and haunted lore, carried the weight of a lost era, and its appearance wasn't just fan service. It was a narrative tool linking the present to the deep history of adaptation. In both series, the anime answered a question the games never fully asked. What does it feel like to be a Pokémon that no one else recognizes? Alolan Marowak, dancing with its ghostly flames, was ostracized by its own kind until a trainer understood its fire. Galarian Ponyta, with its rainbow mane, was a psychic creature that sensed emotions others tried to hide. The emotional weight of Ash's Alolan team and the new cast's encounters in Horizons reminds us that regional forms are not just gameplay mechanics. They are metaphors for belonging, for change, and for the beauty of finding a home in a world that sometimes feels foreign. And as we look to what comes next, the anime has only begun to explore these themes. The future of adaptation, the next chapter in this long story, promises new twists on an old idea, forms we haven't seen, bonds we haven't felt, and a deeper understanding of how environment shapes identity. That story is waiting just beyond the horizon, and I can't wait to tell it to you. The anime gave us a front row seat to the power of adaptation. We watched a wild Alolan Marowak dance through flames that would have consumed a standard one. We saw a Galarian Darmanitan freeze entire battlefields with a look. These episodes weren't just spectacle. They were proof that the environment shapes destiny. And as the cameras pulled back from the screen, we were left with a question that lingers every time a new region is announced. Who's next? Think about the classic Pokémon that still travel through every generation unchanged. There are lines that feel almost forgotten by the modern meta. Fero, for instance, has remained the same since Kanto. Its design is iconic, but its typing and stats feel like a relic. A regional form could give it a whole new identity. Perhaps a coastal region where Fero has adapted to diving for fish, becoming water or flying, or a mountainous region where it's become rock or ground. The same could be said for Parasect. Imagine a tropical region where the mushroom on its back has evolved into a completely different symbiotic relationship, maybe giving it grass and ghost typings, or swapping the bug type for something else entirely. The pattern so far has favoured certain families. Kanto Pokémon have received the lion's share of regional variants, but Yoto and Hoenn remain largely untouched. A regional form for Sudowoodo? That could be fascinating. In a desert region, perhaps it mimics cacti instead of trees, becoming rock and grass. Or what about a regional variant for Dunsparce? The line already received a convergent evolution in Dunsparce, but a true regional form with a different typing and design would finally give this underdog its moment in the sun. But here's where the speculation gets bold. The games have shifted into high gear with paradox forms. Those are not the same as regional forms. They're ancient or future versions of existing Pokémon, pulled from different timelines, and they've been phenomenally successful. The question now is whether Game Freak will eventually merge these two concepts. Could the next generation replace regional forms entirely with a mechanic that lets us see what a Pokémon looked like in the past, or what it might become in the future? Imagine a world where instead of a regional variant of Jigglypuff, we get a past Paradox version from a prehistoric era, or a future Paradox version from a cybernetic tomorrow. It would be a natural evolution of the idea. Environmental adaptation stretched across time. We've already seen the beginnings of this. The Hisuian forms were essentially extinct variants from the past, but they still adhered to the regional form structure. The paradox forms in Paldea, like Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant, broke free of that mold entirely. They don't have different types or abilities in the traditional regional sense. They're entirely new creatures with unique names and lore. If that trend continues, the regional form as we know it might become a stepping stone to something more expansive. A future region could have its own set of regional forms alongside a separate roster of paradox forms, or it could fuse them into a single system. But let's not forget the one question that every trainer holds close to their heart. Will we ever see a regional form for a starter Pokémon again? We had one in Hisui, Hisuian Typhlosion, Decidue and Samurott, but that was a special case, tied to the Legends format. In the mainline games, no starter has received a regional variant outside of that ancient setting. The starters are sacred. They are the first partners, the faces of the generation. Changing them risks breaking that bond, yet the lore supports it. If a starter migrated to a new region and bred there over centuries, its descendants could adapt just like any other Pokémon. Imagine a regional variant of the Charmander line that became water or psychic to survive a volcanic island's unique ecosystem. It's not impossible, just improbable. Game Freak may save that power for a special occasion, perhaps a future Legends title or a spin-off. For now, the starters remain untouched, but the door is not locked. As we gaze forward, the future of adaptation is wide open. Every new region brings new pressures, new climates, new cultures. The very definition of what a regional form is may change. We've seen convergent evolution create parallel species that look alike but are entirely different. We've seen ancient forms and future forms. The next step could be something no one expects. Maybe a region where environmental adaptation is tied to seasonal cycles, or a region where Pokémon take on forms based on the trainer's bond itself. There's a line that cuts through all this speculation. The Pokédex is never full. Every time we think we've seen it all, a new discovery rewrites the map. That's the beauty of this world. So before we let our minds drift through the possibilities, let's remember what the Pokédex represents. A living record of every creature, every adaptation, every story. And that record is about to get a little longer in our next chapter, when we examine the living Pokédex itself. From the future of adaptation, we turn now to the legacy already written. 57 forms. 57 distinct branches on a single evolutionary tree. That is the total count of regional variants as of the Paldean era, and each one represents a quiet revolution in how we understand Pokémon. The concept began as a humble experiment in Alola, a handful of familiar faces twisted by tropical sun and volcanic soil. Rattata adapted to a nocturnal life, its coat turning dark and its teeth growing sharp under the moon. Executor stretched its neck toward the canopy, becoming a towering guardian of island jungles, and Marowak carried the grief of its ancestors as a ghostly flame, dancing between life and death. These were not mere palette swaps. They were proof that a creature we thought we knew could become something entirely different when pressed by environment and culture. But the real impact of regional forms runs deeper than type changes or new abilities. They saved the Pokémon franchise from a quiet trap that had been building for 2 decades, design stagnation. By Generation 6, the core formula of introducing 100 new species every region was starting to strain. Each new set of Pokémon had to feel fresh, but the biological niches were filling up. How many more regional rodents, birds, and bugs could we really accept before they blurred together? The answer came not by inventing entirely new creatures, but by revisiting the old ones and asking a simple question. What if this Pokémon had taken a different path? What if Vulpix never learned to control fire, and instead channeled the frozen energy of its mountain home? What if Meowth, instead of hoarding coins in alleys, became a steel-clad warrior shaped by the Industrial Revolution of Galar? That question unlocked a creative wellspring that has sustained the franchise ever since. Think about the sheer variety now possible. Alolan forms gave us a tropical makeover, but Galarian forms went further by reimagining legendary birds as criminal masterminds, urban couriers, and frozen hunters. Hisuian forms travelled backward in time, resurrecting evolution by dead ends like the shellless Voltorb and the fierce, dragon-like Gudra that had yet to trade its typing for a softer life. Paldean forms introduced the idea of multiple breeds for a single species, as with Tauros, and even gave Wooper a toxic makeover that turned it from a cheerful amphibian into a venomous land dweller. Each generation built on the last, layering environmental adaptation with cultural influence, temporal shifts, and even genetic experimentation. The result is a living library of evolutionary possibilities, a Pokédex that breathes and changes with every new region. Among the 57 forms, a few stand out as particularly impactful. Alolan Executor is an icon of the absurd, a dragon-type palm tree that no one expected but everyone embraced. It taught us that regional forms could be playful, even ridiculous, while still feeling perfectly natural. Galarian Slowking introduced a new evolution method, requiring a unique item and a specific location, blending lore with gameplay in a way that rewarded exploration. Hisuian Zoroark single-handedly turned a beloved creature into a grim spectre of past tragedy, its normal and ghost typing reflecting a life haunted by displacement. And Paldean Tauros, with its 3 distinct breeds, tied directly to the region ranching culture, showed that adaptation could be as simple as a change in diet and temperament. These forms are not just collectibles, they are stories. Each one carries the history of its home region, the ecological pressures that shaped it, and the cultural quirks of the people who live alongside it. As we close this chapter on regional forms, we come to a final reflection. The beauty of change is that it never stops. Pokémon is a franchise built on evolution, not just of individual monsters, but of the entire system that creates them. The regional form concept has proven to be one of the franchise's most flexible and enduring tools. It allows Game Freak to revisit beloved designs without abandoning them, to inject new life into old favorites, and to explore ideas that would be impossible in a clean slate. It also respects the player's history. When you see an Alolan Vulpix in the wild, you don't just see a new Pokémon, you see a memory of the original, and then you see how that memory has been reshaped by time and place. That tension between the familiar and the transformed is what makes regional forms so compelling. 57 forms and counting. They have saved the franchise from stagnation by proving that creativity does not require endless invention. Sometimes, the most powerful act of creation is to take something old and ask, what if it had grown up somewhere else? What if it had faced different challenges, different rivals, different weather? The answers are scattered across Alola, Galar, Hisui and Paldea, and they will continue to appear in every new region we visit. Because the question itself is eternal. Change is not a departure from what we love. It is the very thing that keeps that love alive. The Pokédex is living, and every new form is a heartbeat. So as you drift off tonight, remember that even the most familiar Pokémon carries the potential for transformation. The world of Pokémon is not a closed book. It is a story that evolves with every generation, every new habitat, every unexpected twist of type and form, and we are fortunate to witness it, one adaptation at a time. Good night, and sweet dreams of endless possibilities. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.